too, man. Wait, afraid I was going to say something bad. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the Stochastic.com MLB Deeper Dive. 11 game action, getting this kicked off a little bit early. It would have been earlier, but oddly enough, Adam's internet randomly cut. First time that's happened in, I think, years. It's had a pretty stable connection for a while, but we're back. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D on the Twitters, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS. What's good, brother?
Yeah, internet should be good now. It's randomly done it a couple of times recently where like it'll just cut out and then I restart. I'm good. So should be good to go.
Cool. How you feeling?
Getting better. Looking forward to the weekend.
Getting better, like the allergies just kicking your ass still?
Getting better, like it's not as bad now.
It is odd. I mean, you get allergies in late July?
I get allergies all the time.
Yeah. Maybe you have COVID again.
Nah, it feels different. It felt different than that.
Well, happy to have you guys with us. Yeah, probably. I mean, because you feel okay for the most part, right? It's just the allergies.
Yeah,
like
and in some ways it feels worse than COVID, or felt worse than COVID. Like when you get like those really bad like head colds.
Yeah, they're the worst.
Yeah, as opposed to just like being really tired.
Which honestly, the second and third time I assume I had COVID.
Yeah,
pretty much was a head cold.
Yeah, the second time I had it, I actually ran a fever for a couple of days, which sucked. But
yeah, I remember that you were out in New York or something, and
that was the first time I had it, and I only had a fever like the first day. The second time was when it was like right at the end of NBA All-Star break, and the day we were supposed to fly back, I woke up like I feel like shit.
Malikor said never had it. I never tested positive for it. I just assume I've had like because I wasn't exactly hibernating for all that time.
Right.
I was living my life.
Yeah.
So not in a way that would be wildly irresponsible, but enough to where there's zero chance I didn't get it.
Right. Yeah. So I'm like kind of I got it once last year and I had it once this year, basically a year apart, and kind of surprised I haven't had it more often.
Yeah. I mean, you probably have. You just didn't know. Who knows?
Yeah, it's possible.
Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. Man, what do we got? Almost 200 in here out of the gate. Should be a fun show with 11 games. But yeah, let's get it up. Let's run this up to 100 likes. It is, in fact, a Friday night, so we should be in a good mood. I'm gonna hang tonight. Maybe watch a movie with the wife. I watched The Covenant last Friday with her down here. Crank up the surround sound. Nice little situation. But I'm also thinking, Adam, I may just try and fire off a few more best ball drafts as well.
Yeah, I was actually thinking last night I need to step it up with best balls. Like I started as soon as they launched. And so I was trying to like not go overboard and get too many done too early. And then now it's at the point where I was just like, all right, if I want to max the main tournament on DraftKings and on Underdog and the two on Drafters, I need to start getting in like 10 plus a day. And I haven't been doing remotely close to that.
I'm probably at 5 a day. 10 is really difficult. Like that's,
yeah.
I mean, sure, you can, like, sometimes I'll run 3 at a time, but I have found that my teams don't look as good as I'd like when I'm running 3 at a time. Like,
yeah, it definitely sucks. But I'm also trying to avoid what I did last year where at like in the last week, I'm just doing like 8 at a time all day long and like going blind and giving myself
that's
migraines.
Horrible. That's the worst. And then you'll just run into somewhere, like if I'm doing 3 at a time, where somehow they all sync up and I'm drafting at the same exact. It's the worst.
The worst, like if you're doing it on your computer, it's hard enough. But last year I was better about getting a bunch done because I would just like sit out on the balcony for 4 hours after lock and just like do a couple drafts at a time. But just doing it on my phone and then when they sync up, it's just like you can't do anything.
Yeah. Neil said, y'all ever heard of slow drafts? Yeah, I know.
I will never.
I should just enter like 20 slow drafts at once, and then it would make life a little bit easier because you got 8 hours on each one, you know?
Yeah, it's just you forget like what you're drafting and what you're doing.
I know it's not enjoyable
at
all. All right, let's talk some baseball here. What do we got first? Kansas City, New York Yankees. Oh, and by the way, Live Before Loud coming up after this. They're taking you guys all the way up to first pitch, so make sure not to go anywhere following the deeper dive. Alec Marsh, Clark Schmidt, 8.5 total here. KC Big Road Dogs at Yankee Stadium. I saw a news guy mention that the weather here looked precarious. I think that's what he was saying. Yankee Stadium.
Should be fine.
Looks like a good chance of rain, but we'll see. I'll see. I'll see what he throws in the chat. But anyway, Clark Schmidt, Alec Marsh. Let's kick it off with this one. Pitcher friendly or hitter friendly venue, particularly for lefties. What do you want to do with this game?
I think this game is really, really interesting because of the pricing, particularly on DraftKings, since you need the two pitchers. Still a interesting game to target on FanDuel, but you have Clark Schmidt at 6,200 on DraftKings. He's 8K on FanDuel. So he's fine on FanDuel if you get there, but he's the best SP2 option on DraftKings. He's just probably $2,000 underpriced for, I have no idea what reason. We have him 6th in top 2 pitcher percentage. We have him 2nd in top 2 value percentage, projected for the 3rd most ownership on the slate at 32%. 23% strikeout percentage this year, about a 4.2 xFIP, facing one of the worst offenses against right-handed pitching in baseball. He obviously looks really, really good. And then on the other side, you have Alec Marsh at 5K, who has made 3 starts in the majors, 3 starts at AAA, 11 starts at AA this year, about a 4.3 xFIP across all levels. Projects going forward for around the 4.7 to 4.8 FIP, about a 20 to 22% strikeout percentage. So nothing special, but not terrible. And the Yankees active roster has the worst WRC plus against right-handed pitching this season. So you have 2 weak offenses, 2 very cheap pitchers. So Schmidt projects as the priority here. Marsh at 5K, though, certainly playable. But then on the other side, you have a dirt cheap Kansas City team going into Yankee Stadium, which is a huge park upgrade for home runs. You have a very cheap Yankees team facing a pitcher that's made 6 appearances above AA in his career. It's really hard to envision a way where some part of this game doesn't end up being really useful. Because like if with how cheap Kansas City is and how cheap the Yankees are, if neither of those offenses end up being good value stacks or at least give you a few good value hitters, one of or both of these starting pitchers end up being good and vice versa. If Schmidt doesn't pay off a $6,200 salary, there's just almost no way that a dirt cheap Royals team didn't provide value.
For sure. And it's also crazy looking at the top stacks tool right now that there isn't a single team. And yeah, it's a bigger slate, but still not a single team with a double-digit top stack probability. Like there's 2 around 9, nobody north of 10%.
Yeah, so I was reloading it now. I guess the Giants must have come down since I wrote my article.
9.3, still at the top though against Jake Irvin.
Yeah, even when I wrote the article, I had the same takeaway. Like they were first at 10%. They were also getting the most ownership at 10%. So it really just sets up as a slate overall where I think you can approach it a lot of different ways. I don't think ownership is going to play a huge role.
Would you say that the result of all of this being flat is because there's more really good stacks on tonight's slate and it's just none of them stand out, or that there's just none that are really good?
I think it's that there's a lot of just like mediocre pitching across the board.
Okay.
Like you have a few aces at the top. You have Ohtani, Ryan, and Valdez. Other than that, like every pitcher there's a lot of pitchers that it's like, well, they're not bad. In some cases, they have good strikeout stuff. But like they're in a bad matchup, like Freddie Peralta. But yeah, it's just a lot of spots where the pitching is okay.
Well, let's talk about the Giants in Washington then. You mentioned that San Francisco leads the way, not by much, and it's not like they're pulling away from the pack at 9% top stack probability, 10% ownership. They do, though, have the highest stack score. That is interesting. On our top stack tool, the highest stack score by a mile above everybody else. So we can dive into that. Going up against Jake Irvin, sub 16% strikeout rate on the season for Irvin. 209 x ISO against lefties, 160 against righties. He hasn't exactly given up, an immense amount of power. And this isn't exactly great American ballpark, but it's when you're looking at a guy that has a 5% K minus BB rate and an XFIP that's currently sitting at 5.65, he's just not that good, but you'd probably like him to give up some power in this game as well if this stack's going to fully pay off.
Yeah, and Irvin has had issues with left-handed power in particular this year. Not that he's been great against righties, 160 expected ISO, 348 expected WOBA to righties, but almost identical expected WOBA to lefties at 347, but a 209 expected ISO. And you have plenty of power, left-handed power in the Giants lineup. Lamont Wade is back. He had missed a few games after leaving early with a hamstring injury. So that's a guy that has a 200 plus expected ISO against right-handed pitching. Peterson hitting second at 4,400 looks really good. You have Conforto, Yastrzemski, Bailey, Sable, all from the left side. So the only hitter in the top 8 that is right-handed is JD Davis, who has some power as well. But a pretty deep Giants lineup, a lot of left-handed bats here. And then they're all just still free. They managed to get through Cincinnati without ever having their prices increase. They still didn't increase here. There was no lag effect or anything. So that's why you're seeing them first in stack score by a wide margin. Is they're first in top stack percentage by a smaller margin, but they also have the highest top value percentage. So pretty clearly the top stack tonight. They are projected to be the highest or second highest owned team along with Arizona, but it's still just a situation where the ownership's not really that concerning.
On the other side, Washington against Alex Wood, they're 5.7% top value, so middle of the pack there. Nothing really stands out here. Alex Wood just, another one of these left. The problem is that while Alex Wood has had some dreadful starts times, 5.21 xFIP, not great on the season, doesn't strike batters out at an insane clip, but he's hitting around league average at 20.6%. I think ultimately the problem is that the Washington bats just aren't that good. And like you pointed out, San Francisco in the same game at the same park, just the value stands out so much more than a team like Washington in probably a better matchup.
Right. It's the fact that the Nats offer value because they're cheap, and Alex Wood has struggled this year, particularly with righties, but they're the same price as the Giants, which is insane. Alex Wood has allowed a 206 expected ISO to righties this year. Lane Thomas is very good, 4,800 from the right side, no issues with that. If you want to get to some like Meneses, Ruiz, Garrett, Abrams, any of that stuff is fine, but it's pretty far down the list in terms of priorities just because you do have such inexpensive teams that just look better.
Do you have any interest in Alex Wood today?
Not really. The case for him would simply be that he's basically the same price as Clark Schmidt, and he's projected for 1/30th of the ownership. But it just goes back to what we talk about a lot, where you're not trying to just make the most under-owned lineup. That's typically still going to be a pretty shitty lineup. And especially with how flat ownership is on bats today, it's probably going to be pretty easy to get low enough owned hitters that you can just play a good amount of Clark Schmidt when you need to pay down. Schmidt didn't show up a ton in my Sims video earlier. I was under the field on him, but it wasn't that I was pivoting to a lot of other cheap pitchers. It was just that I was taking a bigger stand on the mid-range guys.
Let's talk about New York Mets and Boston Red Sox here. Kodai Senga going up against the Red Sox, Cutter Crawford on the other side of this one. Sox on the active roster, though, strikeout rate sub 21%. It's bottom 5 in the league. Senga, of course, nasty strikeout stuff. He's striking out batters at a 30% clip this season. Definitely has some issues when it comes to issuing free passes, but the upside has been there. He is getting some ownership, 9,600. Not the greatest strikeout matchup, kind of a difficult one. But he's not getting some ownership, but is top what? I'm looking at top 2. Wow. Dude, that is shocking. We have him 11% top 2 probability. And mind you, it's kind of flat there on the slate for pitching, not just for stacks, which makes sense. 1.9% ownership. We have very little ownership going to Senga right now.
Yeah, it's just tough to get to him because you have Ohtani, Valdez, Ryan that all project quite a bit better. But then you also have the Lynn, Peralta, Schmidt grouping that projects better, and they're a lot less expensive. And then Senga's just kind of like lumped in with Kikuchi, Miller, Heaney in terms of projection. So it's really tough to get there, but the ceiling is there. If you want a low-owned pitcher that has upside, he has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate, not including Alec Marsh, since Marsh has only made 3 starts and is not going to keep striking out 32% of guys. Senga's got a slightly better strikeout percentage than Ryan. He's got a better strikeout percentage than Valdez. It's a tough matchup against the Red Sox. It's a park downgrade in Fenway Park. This game probably also has the most weather concerns. It still looks okay right now, but definitely something to keep an eye on. But Senga is a good pitcher. It's just that in the context of this slate, it's tough to get to him because he doesn't project that well compared to alternatives. But in large field tournaments, if you get So a little bit more Senga, especially if maybe you are going to a team like the Giants that their ownership isn't problematic, but you do have several guys that are 15 to 20% owned. Maybe you go to Senga and just hope that he goes out there and racks up a bunch of strikeouts.
It's crazy too, though. I mean, his last 2 appearances, he's gone 8 innings, 1 run, 12 Ks, 6 innings, 1 run, 9 Ks, both of them on solo shots. That's against Arizona, bottom 3 K rate against righties, and against the Dodgers, like a super potent offense against right-handed arms. He's thrown 100+ pitches in 4 straight and 7 of his last 10. So I can understand why the tool would have him as like a good leverage play, because it's not an ideal spot on paper at all. But he has proven, particularly recently, that he can go out there in tough matchups and rack up the strikeouts.
Yeah, and as far as the recent stuff goes, there is at least some reason to maybe be a little bit more optimistic, just because you are talking about somebody that came over from Japan. He's in his first year in the majors. It's not crazy to think maybe he's just getting more acclimated and you're going to see more of these good starts going forward. The strikeout stuff's been there, all year. He has a 30% strikeout percentage, but he did struggle with walks early on. He had some power issues early on. So the ceiling is definitely there for him. It's just, it becomes so tough to get to him. When you think about it, like, think about what your lineups would look like with Kodai Senga. If you started your lineup with Senga and then you build it out, you get to whatever stacks you want, you get whatever SP2 you want. In so many of those lineups, you're going to just say, wait, I have the money to turn Senga into Ohtani, Valdez, Ryan. Or if I drop down and save $2,000 or $3,000 to a guy that projects similarly, I can upgrade the 2 weakest hitters in my lineup. So that's why he's going to be tough to get to, but that's also why he's only 1 or 2% owned.
Right. Makes sense. When you look at leverage scores and you see like a high leverage score on somebody that's really low owned, how do you kind of parlay that information into your decision making? Because not everybody with a quality leverage score at like 1% owned, it doesn't actually always make them a good play.
Especially with pitching, I don't generally read too much into it. Like, the way I kind of view it is just, okay, this is a good contrarian play if I need it. Typically, I don't take huge stands on pitching. There are obviously exceptions, but especially on larger slates. So it just, to me, when I look at it, it says, okay, Ohtani, Valdez, Ryan are all better. They all project better. If I have a specific lineup where I can afford Senga, but I can't afford those guys, or I have so much ownership amongst my hitters that I don't want those other guys, Senga is a good under-owned play that can save me ownership. But it also, he's just behind those other guys in terms of chances of success and projection.
I can't imagine you're getting to a ton of Cutter Crawford here.
No, but I do think he's going under-owned. It's a tough matchup. So it's kind of like, it's a cheap version of Senga, I think. It's a tough matchup against the Mets, but you have a predominantly left-handed lineup going up against Crawford, who this season has a 28% strikeout percentage against lefties, 263 expected WOBA, 25.5% strikeout percentage overall as a starter. It's not a good matchup. It's not a good park. I don't want a lot of Cutter Crawford, but he does fit into, like I said, kind of a cheaper Senga, where if you have that lineup where you need to pay down for an SP2, but you also don't want to go to Clark Schmidt for whatever reason, Cutter Crawford has a legitimate ceiling at 5,500.
Dude, I'm looking at this since you brought it up. He has a 21% swinging strike rate on his fastball against lefties.
Yeah, and it is weird. So Josh mentioned it this morning. I just, talked about his splits against lefties this year. Last year, he also had an elevated strikeout percentage, struck them out 27% of the time. He did allow a 364 expected WOBA and 239 expected ISO. So part of this year, like the limited production, could just be small sample size, but he did also seemingly turn his changeup into a splitter and his curveball into a knuckle curve, which combined he's thrown 29% of the time. So he does have a couple of different pitches that he's worked in this year that could just be contributing to him being better.
You have any interest in bats?
Yeah, it's a good park for runs. Neither pitcher is bad, like I said, but certainly happy to get to either team. The Mets are pretty cheap across the board. They are second in stack score, fifth in top stack percentage, 7% chance of being the top stack, 8% top value percentage, 9% ownership share. So I just mentioned that Crawford's been pretty good against lefties. That doesn't mean you can't go to good hitters like Nimmo, McNeil in particular. This is a little bit weaker lineup than usual as well. But I do like Pete Alonso and Francisco Alvarez quite a bit. You get the short left field wall. Obviously, it's 100 feet high, but you get a park upgrade slightly in terms of right-handed home runs from Citi Field. You also are just getting a huge park upgrade in terms of run scoring. And Crawford has a lot of 201 expected ISO to righties this year. So individually, I like Alonso and I like Alvarez. On the other side, tougher to get to the Red Sox. You know, it's still a game in Fenway Park. It's still a good run scoring environment. They come in 7th in stack score. But to me, they're just a team that is middle of the road in pretty much every aspect.
Let's move this one on to Philadelphia and Cleveland. How many likes we at? 80. Oh man, we're gonna be 100 likes and note to see it's Friday. Friday. That's what happened. We got 17 likes away from 100 already. We're at 510. Still a ways to go here, and a bunch of games to touch on for an 11 gamer. You know, Ranger Suarez is a pretty decent pitcher. And I'm not saying this is some ace, but 22 almost percent strikeout rate, 405 xFIP. But at the same time, Cleveland just doesn't strike out, man. I mean, and if you look at Cleveland's K rate versus lefties, lowest in baseball, tied with Houston. Adam, it's at 17.4% strikeout rate versus left-handed pitching. That is in the basement.
Yeah, really, really tough strikeout spot. And he's not at that dirt cheap price tag we were getting earlier in the year. There was a stretch where he was like one of my favorite contrarian plays on every slate because he just kept being like 5% owned at $6,500. And there was like people for whatever reason think he's bad and the pricing thinks he's bad. And I just played him a lot. Now the pricing has adjusted to 8K and it's not a good strikeout matchup, like you said. So he's a good pitcher, 4.05 xFIP, 21% strikeout percentage. It's not a bad park to pitch in. Modest 4.1 to 4.2 implied run total for Cleveland. If you're playing a ton of lineups and you just happen to have Suarez somewhere, sure, but it's tough to actually get to him in limited lineups. And the same can be said for Gavin Williams. At 7K, he's talented. He was a top 100 prospect coming into the season. Last I looked at the MLB pipeline rankings, I think he was top 20. They have him 10th now. So he's jumped as the year has gone on. He's not been great at the major league level in a limited sample, but he's certainly talented enough at no ownership that, you know, sort of like I was saying with Cutter Crawford at no ownership, $700 less than Schmidt. Williams is $800 more. If you, for whatever reason, feel like you need a low-owned pitcher instead of Schmidt, but you need to pay down, Williams is fine. But it's not a great matchup against the Phillies. There are just pitchers that project better, and as a result, I don't anticipate getting to that much of him.
Pretty crazy that for 5 starts, Ranger Suarez was 5,800 or cheaper. He got down to 5,200 at one point.
Yep.
And then he had 2 good starts and he jumped up to 8,700. Like that's just, I mean, he's probably like a $7,500 pitcher.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of my point here is, you know, he's at this 8K price point now. So now you're just looking at it and saying, yeah, this is a guy, you know.
Yeah. If he was 5,800, we could overlook the matchup here for sure.
Oh yeah, if he's 5,800, if he was 5,800 and you were getting something like the same 32% ownership to Schmidt and like 10 to Suarez, I would love Suarez. But at 8K, he's kind of just there.
Yeah, exactly. And for what it's worth, he's not pulling a lot of ownership either. 1.9%.
Right.
Williams is pulling 1.8% right now. Again, both of them positively leveraged, but it goes back to what we were just talking about. It doesn't mean just start jamming those guys in because they have a 5% top 2 pitcher probability at all.
Right, exactly. It's, you know, that's always, and I've mentioned it a lot when we talk about the Sims tool, how like that just brings everything together. It can be kind of tough when you're talking about stuff on a show to say, hey, like this guy's going underowned. He's a good contrarian play. But that doesn't mean like you're not trying to make a lineup where you're just like, I have the most underowned lineup there is. I played a bunch of really shitty players, but they're all 1% owned and they should be 5% owned.
For sure. Any interest at all in Philly bats here? I mean, I will say one thing about Gavin Williams. I know we have a small sample size, but his expected power numbers are very, very low so far.
Yeah, and it's not a great park for power either. And it's a slate where you have a lot of good offenses to get to. This is just a spot where I think the offenses are very similar to the pitching. Like, I don't fault anybody if you get there. It's perfectly reasonable. If at the end of the night, the Phillies win a tournament because Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Castellanos, Harper, Real Muto had good games. Like, that shouldn't surprise anybody. They're good. But you're not looking at it and saying, like, oh, this is a spot I really want to get to. And that goes for the other side as well. Suarez is just a solid pitcher. The Guardians lineup top to bottom isn't as dangerous as the Phillies. Jose Ramirez individually looks really good, as always. But this game, to me, it's kind of the opposite of the Yankees Kansas City game. This one is just like, yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff in it, like good players, but they're all priced where they should be. I don't have any real interest in getting to any of them. Whereas the New York game is like, there's a ton of really bad players here, but they're all dirt cheap and somebody has to win out.
For sure. Bill Miner said, thank you. And Adam and Josh and Neil. Some other sites have taken their MLB premium. Really appreciate what you guys do and for keeping them accessible. I'm going to get the lineup generator for that reason alone. Hey, man, what are you waiting for? But no, for sure. These shows will always be free. They'll always be free for sure. The lineup generator isn't, but it's $4.48 for the first week. And as you can see from so many of the results, like I would assume that's why Bill also would like to try it. Pretty sweet tool. Yeah. Adam and I dug into it a little bit yesterday, just the entire concept of it, of like how hand building lineups is, you're the one that said it, and you're very right, especially for me, like for NFL. Hand building lineups for football, it's fun. You piece stacks together, or for baseball, you piece your stacks together. Probably the least amount of fun, in my opinion, hand building for basketball, because there's no real correlation that you're playing there. But still, it's fun. The difference, though, is that it's very difficult, and you said this. I had asked you this question. It's like, how do you pull the trigger hand building manually on some of these guys that are just gross on paper but make good sense from a game theory standpoint? With the lineup generator, it's just giving you lineups that are already projected to be towards the top and that are, not so chalky that you're just throwing money away. And you don't have to go through that process in your head of being like, man, I don't want to click on that guy and put him into my lineup.
Yeah, exactly. And I've almost started just having fun doing the opposite of that, because normally I just happen to be rushing around lock. So like, and Josh knows this because I'll send them my exposures after lock. I'd never really know who I'm playing until the slate lock. So like, instead of getting the enjoyment out of, actually hand building my lineups and all of that, now I just get the excitement. It's like, Christmas morning where lock hits and I'm like, oh shit, what did I play?
It's like when we were opening Rainmaker packs.
Right, exactly.
You DM me the other day. You're like, turns out I got 70% glass now, but my highest 2-owned pitchers are from Baltimore. Like, you had no idea until that game locked. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But
that one, it ended up being exactly what you and me had talked about on the show.
Yeah. Like not being afraid to play two of those guys. Yeah. But man, it's $4.48. If you don't like it, like you're down less than $5, and you can see the optimal projection for all of your lineups. Jordan has it up on the screen. Like, see the projection, optimal, and then the ownership, how chalky or contrarian it is. If you like it, you can save it, save all of them. And then once you've saved all of them, you can go in, upload it to CSV, or you can discard them if you don't like it. You can also set your stack types. We had a question. Someone asked Adam, like, what type of stacks are you running tonight? Adam said he always does 5-2 or 5-3. You can make that decision in the lineup generator, run those type of stacks, and then run another type of stack, add them all up. It's optimized for mobile too. So if you just wanted to do it on your phone and plug them in, you're in business. But yeah, you see, like, there you have it. There's all of your exposures in there to all your stack exposures, all your lineups on the left. 448 is a crazy price if you're not in. And we've had some, again, really big wins with people using the lineup generator. I'm always happy. I love seeing that stuff. So if you want to get in, link in the description and in chat for 448 first week, probably a pretty good deal. And who knows, maybe you create a monster screenshot of yourself and we show it off for you for the next week. All right, let's talk about Arizona and Cincinnati. Tommy Henry, Ben Lively. Arizona, slight dogs on the road, 10.5 total, though. We got another game at Cincinnati. Right now, the Cincinnati Reds top stack probability in the tool, top stacks tool, is 7.7%, slightly negatively leveraged here. And also, we know this, an expensive team. What's the process if you're getting to Cincinnati? What do your lineups look like if you're getting to Cincinnati?
Well, they'll have a lot of Reds in them. Sorry, I couldn't help it. But
what did I say?
You asked what my lineups look like if I'm stacking Cincinnati.
Oh, okay. A good
Yeah.
one.
Well,
You know,
I was trying to buy time, and it was just like the first thing that came to
yeah, I was
mind.
gonna say you knew exactly what I
Yeah.
meant.
So it's kind of they're
You should have
expensive,
just
but
ended with that, and it would have been great.
yeah,
Like they'll have a lot of reds in them, but on the other side of this
right.
game,
You probably weren't listening close enough that you would have caught it though.
no, I caught that one because I'm like, did I say something dumb that
No.
I? Yeah.
So it's this slate's kind of weird in that you can actually it could look a variety of ways. Like a lot of times when you talk about these expensive teams, you're like, oh, well, you're going to need to, it means you're going to like the cheap pitching or whatever it may be. And it could mean that you're playing like Otani plus Schmidt, or you're playing Lynn plus Peralta in the mid range. But also, you have so many cheap bats elsewhere. So, like, you could stack Cincinnati and then just be using the Giants or the Nats or the Royals or whatever and still be getting quality pitching. So I don't think they're going to be that difficult to get to. They're still going to be relatively low owned, probably just because they are overpriced for their median projection, but they still have massive ceilings. And again, this is where like the Sims tool comes into play, the lineup generator comes into play. Anything that you can use, any tool you can use to incorporate range of outcomes into your process is going to make the Reds look better than if you're just playing straight median projections. Because Ellie De La Cruz, as good as he is, not a $6,500 player if Shohei Otani is also like a $6,500 player. That's just not the case. But he still has one of the highest ceilings because he steals so many bases. He has so much power, and he's in a great park. Matt McLean, good hitter, shouldn't be $100 less expensive than Corbin Carroll, but still a good hitter in a good park with MPE. So the Reds are a very high upside team. You're just not going to get a ton of ownership coming in. Right now, you're getting like 8%. 8% chance of being the top stack. They're middle of the pack in stack score. So they're still relatively difficult to get to, but the slate does make it a little bit easier because you have the cheap Schmidt price, because you have so many cheap other bats. But also the way the lineup is laid out is a little bit more favorable. Nick Senzel's hitting second at 3,500. Encarnacion's hitting seventh at 3K. So you, Benson's batting ninth at 2,800. So you do have a few spots that are really cheap that you could get to also.
Okay. Well, you know, this is one where I think both sides are going to be pretty appealing. Arizona, 9% top stack probability, 10% ownership. I just pulled up the lineup generator myself, and the first three lineups were Arizona stacks, and some of them look pretty good. There's another one right here. Just looking at some of the price points on these guys, there are some discounted bats in these Arizona lineups that are going to open things up. Is that the way you want to play this if you're going to Arizona?
Yeah, it's not that expensive of a team top to bottom. The good players in the middle of the order are expensive, but they're reasonable. You know, Marte at 5,500, Carroll at 58, Walker at 54. There's no problems with any of those guys. Corbin Carroll is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. Mentioned him in my MLB article. Lively has been okay this year overall. I don't really expect that to continue, but against lefties, he's still had trouble anyway. 19.8% K percentage, 252 expected ISO. Carroll's got a 140 WRC plus this year and 29 stolen bases. Just so many ways for him to get there. Really, really high ceiling. Like him a lot. Marte will be hitting from the left side. Perdomo will be hitting from the left side, assuming he's in the lineup. Jake McCarthy was showing up a bit in the Sims video I did earlier. He's somebody I get to quite a bit just because he's cheap. He's a good enough hitter, but he also can fly. So big stolen base threat at 3K. That's really nice as well. So the Diamondbacks look really good. They are neck and neck with the Giants in ownership. They're second in top stack percentage, right next to the Giants. They're third in stack score. In my Sims video earlier, I was getting to Arizona, I think the second most often. Yankees were first. Again, that obviously can change as lineups come out, but Arizona looks really, really good here.
We had a question in chat from Devin. Is running a 5-man Royal stack to get to Otani and Valdez dumb?
No, not at all.
No, I think you had touched on that at the beginning of the show that, you know, Kansas City is, you know, a decent enough value stack that opens things up, and you're getting leverage off of the high owned pitching on the other side of that.
They're getting a park upgrade for home runs, and it really just goes back to like that game. You know, KC and the Yankees both suck offensively, but they're really cheap. And if one of them just has a good game, then you have access to these, you know, Otani Valdez or Otani Ryan lineups. Similarly, Schmidt and Marsh, Schmidt's fine. Marsh may or may not end up being good. Probably isn't very good right now, but they're so cheap that if one of them does well, then you just have access to like the Reds, the Diamondbacks, the Braves, like all these really high upside offenses. So something from that game almost like has to be good.
Right. It's just which is it going to be? And hopefully rain doesn't create an issue there. I mean, with bats, if you're playing bats, I'm not too worried if there's a delay or something.
Yeah, I mean, this one looks okay right now.
Yeah. Sunflower said, I love life and I love the world. I love all of you. You guys are all so great. Remember to give yourself credit for working hard and persisting throughout life's hardships.
That is absolutely the most positive thing that has ever come out of YouTube chat.
Yeah, eat shit, dude. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We love you too, brother. We're a positive. It was just too good of an opportunity to pass that up. We appreciate you too, Sunflower.
Should have just like timed them out immediately.
Just straight Brandon Katz them.
Yeah. Well, this is obviously spam.
Nah, what a nice comment. We love you guys, man. YouTube chat's actually, I mean, yesterday YouTube chat in here was popping off for a 3-game slate. That was fun. I mean, I don't even remember what Margot Robbie.
I was gonna say, was yesterday Margot Robbie?
And Tyler Glass, now Killian Murphy.
Right.
And then you said they brought it up on the broadcast as well.
Yeah, the Orioles broadcast brought it up and then immediately followed up that Glass now does have like a 1 foot height advantage.
And then I asked you if Jordan Klein was the one measuring.
Yeah, he's actually 6'6", but he looks 5'6".
And we're almost at 150 likes. Yeah, we're in business today. We're having a good time. Anything else on Arizona since you want to talk Dodgers, Texas here?
No, offenses just look really good. Oh, we did just get the Arizona lineup as we were talking. Nothing surprising. Perdomo, Marte, Carroll, Walker, Gurriel, McCarthy, Rivera, Moreno, Thomas. Don't sleep on Gabby Moreno as a cheap catcher option. He can hit. But yeah, the bottom of this order is cheap. It helps offset those prices at the top.
Yeah, Moreno, very cheap, 2,400. Rivera batting 6 at 3,200 as well.
7th.
Oh, was he batting 7th?
Yeah, McCarthy's up to 6th.
I thought it was 6. Okay. That may, yeah. I mean, not that it's a massive difference.
No, I just assume it means I'm going to get more McCarthy than I already do.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right, let's talk about Dodgers and Texas. It's a fun matchup here for sure. Tony Gonsolin, Andrew Heaney. Let's kick this one off with Andrew Heaney, because this is one of those like kind of enigmatic pitchers where you like the strikeout stuff is there, but then you have games where he'll have 10 Ks in like 4 innings. He's going up against the Dodgers, obviously, left-handed pitcher. God, he hasn't made it out of the 6th inning since May 27th, Adam.
Gonsolin?
Andrew Heaney hasn't made it out of the 6th inning since May 27th.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you strike out a lot of guys and then also just get blasted.
Yeah, pretty much. You have any interest here at all at 7,200?
He was showing up quite a bit in my Sims video earlier. I'm hoping that stops happening by the time we get to lock, but he's fine at 5% owned in tournaments, 8% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher, 9% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher. He gives you strikeout upside at 24.5%, but it's a brutal matchup with the Dodgers. The strikeout numbers are down this year compared to where they were last year when he was on the Dodgers. So like he's okay. He probably should be getting a little bit more ownership, but also I would rather not get much of him.
Kirk asks, see, Kirk, why do you do this to me, man? How is Laffy not talked about the cocaine sharks in Florida? I'm not familiar with usually I'm up on this stuff. I'm the one providing.
Yeah, I was going to say, as soon as I saw that, I assumed you already had like a 5-minute monologue ready.
No, I wait till you're dealing with crippling allergies. What are the cocaine sharks? Cocaine sharks may be feasting on bales of drugs off Florida's coast. What? Cocaine dumped in the Sea of Florida could have crazy consequences if sharks eat it.
Crazy brain sharks high on cocaine, experts say.
What? Kirk, dude, you're going to send me down a rabbit hole, brother. That's so funny. Maybe feasting on drugs. Lucky Sharks, though, huh? They don't even have to pay for it.
Cocaine Bear was a true story. I never even watched it because,
Yeah,
like,
man, but he died in like 5 minutes because his heart exploded.
did you make that up?
No, no, no. Like
Oh,
in real life,
okay.
I don't care how big of a bear you are. You eat like 7 kilos of coke or whatever it
Right,
was. You're not just chilling. Like,
right.
man, it's probably a wild. I'm thinking the same thing with these sharks, though.
But like when I like with Cocaine Bear, like I saw the title and everything, I was like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. I didn't realize it was actually like real.
To think that that was poor Ray Liotta's last movie. I mean, what a
I didn't
stain
realize
on that
that.
legacy. You know, got Goodfellas, and then you close it
Cocaine
out
Bear.
with Cocaine Bear. Yeah. Kirk, I will do my research. I'll give you my assessment and be back with you on Monday for Cocaine Sharks.
A documentary focusing on sharks on cocaine is set to premiere during Shark Week, which begins on Sunday.
What, are they just pushing this shit out in
They
3 days? That's crazy. I'll watch it.
Biologists studying the phenomenon reported seeing a hammerhead shark swimming into discarded packages and biting into them. After ingesting the drugs, the sharks were observed to be behaving erratically, causing what scientists call crazy brain. Very scientific name.
Yeah. So like when us humans, when the humans are all coked up, it just it's just crazy. Leave him alone. He's just got crazy brain. Yeah. Tony Gonsolin. Any interest whatsoever against Texas here in Texas?
No.
Okay.
He's a good enough pitcher, but tough matchup. Not a great strikeout pitcher. Rangers obviously a really good offense.
We can talk about bats though. I mean, I do think this is kind of interesting. Just given Heaney's profile, that he can get some strikeouts, but he's also the type of guy that can get blasted too. Right-handed hitting. Sorry, 213 x ISO. 339 expected WOBA against him from batters on the opposite side of the plate. What do you make of this Dodgers lineup and how to play it against Heaney today?
Yeah, I think they're a pretty interesting stack in tournaments because they're expensive, but as we've talked about, there's a variety of ways that you can offset salary to be able to afford a stack like this. And Andrew Heaney certainly gives up plenty of power, particularly to right-handed hitters. Sub 100 expected ISO to lefties this year. Freeman, of course, not your normal lefty, same for Muncy, but Betts, Smith, Martinez, Taylor, all in the top 5. You have a cheap Johnny DeLuca, Rojas, Hernandez hitting 7 through 9. Not the most exciting guys to get to, but they can help if you need salary relief. But against righties this year, 213 expected ISO for Heaney, 339 expected WOBA, and just obviously some really good right-handed bats here. In terms of top stack percentage, the Dodgers are going a little bit under-owned. 7% chance of being the top stack, 5% aggregate ownership. They are expensive, so their stack score is 6th best, but I like getting there if you can afford them.
Okay. Do you have any interest in bats against Gonsolin today, Texas bats? Because they're
not as much. It's still the Rangers, so you can always just make that case of, hey, they're really good. Semien and Seager are extremely expensive. Garcia's priced up. Everybody else is reasonably priced, though. Nathaniel Lowe coming in at 3,800. Young and Heim, 4,600 and 4,700. So far this year, Gonsolin has had issues with lefties. 371 expected ISO, 234 expected WOBA. So I think Seager, Lowe, Heim are where you're looking first.
Okay. Anthony, no, I haven't seen Blackbird, but I'm that's on my list. I've actually been meaning to check that out. I didn't know. I forgot that was Ray Liotta in there. Andy, Laffy, we need a hippo on coke. Yeah, that'd be insane. That would be. I'd take him. There was a question the other day. It was like, would you rather fight you had 20 minutes to survive with, I think it was like a lion, a silverback, a crocodile, and a hippo.
Yeah, it was the same question that comes up like every 3 weeks.
All the time. But I'm saying, isn't the answer just very easily the croc?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Very easily, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The only counter argument to that I saw somebody make was cats sleep a lot, and if it's just a random 20 minutes, there's a very good chance the tiger's asleep.
Can't. That people always try and get way too,
right. Assuming that the animal is awake, the answer has to be alligator / crocodile.
Right. What a stupid. Yeah, exactly. It's got to be. They are kind of quick. I saw that they can run up to 20 miles per hour on land, but I would just zig and zag with those stumpy little arms. I would try and hide behind a tree or something.
Yes. I don't think I'm particularly good at climbing trees, but I would attempt it.
Just hang on a branch, get up on a branch, not hang. Dead hangs are tough, dude. You wouldn't last a minute, but yeah, you could do something.
Yeah. All right. Although knowing I'm not good at climbing trees, that's probably a really bad idea. Cause like If I don't get up the tree, like I'm just screwed at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
No,
might have been better off just continuing the run.
you'd have to have a plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Atlanta, Milwaukee, 9-run total here. Atlanta minus 120 on the road. Michael Soroka, Freddie Peralta. All right, we can dive into this one. Freddie Peralta, 8,500. He's getting 11% ownership today, 12.8% top stack probability at Miller Park against the Atlanta Braves. Are you matching the field or coming in above the field on Peralta? Because that surprised me a little bit in this spot.
Yeah, so this is another one that I am hoping my lineups look different than they did in my Sims video because Peralta showed up like 35% of the time or something. The ceiling is there. He's got a 27% strikeout percentage. He's only $8,500, but this is such a tough matchup against the Braves. You're in a good park for hitters. The Braves have a 4.6 implied run total, which for the Braves is like the equivalent of like any other team having like a 3.3 implied run total probably, but still a really, really dangerous spot. I'm hoping that my Peralta exposure gets more in line with the field. It's not a spot where I particularly want to take a huge stand because I have no reason to be confident in him pitching well. The Braves are really good. But, you know, it is important to keep in mind DFS is a salary-based game. And yes, the matchup sucks, but you're also getting a 27% strikeout percentage at $8,500.
Yeah, it's true. It's just one of those, it's a scary spot for sure.
Yeah, and also 183 expected ISO allowed to righties this year. He has a 31.5% K percentage against them, but you're having power issues against same-handed hitters, running into Acuna, Riley, Murphy on top of, you know, Ozuna and Arcia might not be where you want to go.
Yeah. I mean, 183 is not terrible. It's not like the worst, but it's not great either.
It does not inspire confidence.
No. The 31% strikeout rate against righties is pretty significant, though.
Yep. The problem is that they are hard to strike out.
That is a huge problem. Yeah. Soroka's pulling 1%. Again, another one of these guys down there at no ownership that, of course, is going to look decent from a leverage perspective just because all of these guys are like 5-6% top 2 pitcher probability. But, you know, not a guy that's posed a whole lot of upside. He is sub 7K, though. Any interest at all in Soroka?
Gavin Williams level interest.
Yeah, okay.
The Brewers lineup isn't very good. It never is very good, but you also don't have Rowdy Tellez. But, you know, Soroka, we still don't know what he is as a pitcher. He's missed most of the last 4 seasons. So far this year, you know, hasn't been back for very long. Striking out 16.7% of hitters, 5.22 xFIP. Chances are he ends up just being like a decent pitcher going forward, but you know, who knows, because he's missed so much time on this particular slate. I don't think you really need to get to him.
All right. Oh, what do we got? 1, 2, 3. Let's talk a little bit about bats here, and then we can get into the White Sox of Minnesota. Looking at the top stacks tool, you guys already know 50% off all of our tools, weekly or monthly. You know, all of our top stack, top pitcher. You hear us reference them. The lineup generators included in that. If you wanted to do like Stochastic plus Platinum, all of our tools for, you know, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, MLB, all of that stuff, 50% off. And I can't stress enough how important it is to know that you don't have to really know these sports. That's why you get the tools. And as Adam always points out, a lot of times, like, not knowing a sport is better because you can't make decisions to actually work against yourself. You can't make bad decisions intentionally. You know, you can't intentionally make decisions that end up being bad because your own biases don't play a role. So you go in and you use the tools and you trust the tools, and then you're going to have much better lineups because you don't need to know the sport. You've had some crazy wins on sports that you just didn't know at all using tools.
Yeah, my biggest ever win was in PGA, which I know nothing about.
Yeah. So 50% off, link in the description and in chat. I always remind you guys of that if you're looking to get in. Yeah, 50% off a week, a month, one sport, all sport, however you want to play it. Do you like bats in this game from Atlanta or Milwaukee?
I mean, yeah, I always like Atlanta bats. The problem, so they're going under owned, 2.5% aggregate ownership, 6% chance of being the top stack, but they're second from the bottom in stack score just because they're so expensive. While you were talking, I opened the DraftKings just to see how this would look. I took the top 5 hitters, so Acuna, Albies, Riley, Olsen, Murphy, and then I put in Clark Schmidt and Cutter Crawford. Basically, I mean, you could turn Crawford into Marsh, I guess. So like the two best top two value percentages on DraftKings, that leaves you with $2,966 for per position for your remaining three bats. And that's if you're just like completely punting the pitcher position. So that speaks to how difficult it is to get the, the best 5-man from the Braves. Now you can use Ozuna, Rosario, Arcia, Harris. They're much more reasonably priced. You can get, use two of them and get better lineups, but it's a really hard team to 5-man stack. I do like them as 2-mans, 3-mans, one-offs, just because, they're not going to be that popular and they do have massive upside. Ronald Acuna is projected for 10% ownership. Nobody else on the Braves is projected above like 2 or 3%. Now that might be a little bit low. Matt Olson maybe comes in at like 4 or 5% instead of 2, but as like a 2-man stack, I really like them. As a 5-man, I'd like the idea of it. I just don't really know how you execute it that often.
Chicago and Minnesota. White Sox plus 135 in Minnesota today. You got Lance Lynn going and Joe Ryan on the other side. You already mentioned Joe Ryan. You alluded to Joe Ryan earlier in the show. He's pulling 20% right now, 19% top two pitcher probability on DraftKings. Lance Lynn, 24% ownership, 15% top two pitcher probability today. Yeah, so both of the pitchers in this game with an 8-run total are popular. We know Lance Lynn has strikeout stuff. He's also, Lance Lynn can get blown up and still strike out 10. So that makes him somewhat interesting. What are you doing with both of these arms today? Really interesting spot, interesting game for the mound.
Yeah, they both look good. Joe Ryan is just a really good pitcher. Third highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Ohtani and Senga at 28.9%, 3.69 xFIP, doesn't walk guys, has allowed about 1.3 home runs per 9. Righties have a 191 expected ISO against him. Lefties are sub 100. Park isn't bad for pitching, 3.6 implied run total for the White Sox. So Ryan looks good. It just becomes a matter of, do you get to him or do you go Ohtani? Do you go Valdez? He didn't show up a ton in my Sims video earlier, but I'm not taking away anything from that. Like he's a good play. He just didn't happen to show up in that video. On the other side, Lynn, it's kind of a scary spot just because the Twins do have so many lefties. Now, Willie Castro
extreme splits, dude. They're so nuts.
Yeah, so Willie Castro did just get scratched by the Twins. Don't know who's going to replace him in the lineup, but Julian, Kirilloff, Kepler, Wallner, all left-handed. Gallo is left-handed. As of right now, again, not knowing who's going to replace Castro, but Correa, Buxton, and Jeffers are your only righties. And, Jeffers is fine for a catcher, but obviously Correa and Buxton are just very good righties. So it's a scary matchup for somebody that has allowed a 262 expected ISO and a 381 expected WOBA to lefties this year. His actual numbers are even worse. He does get a park upgrade here going from Chicago to Minnesota. Strikeout percentage is about 7 points lower against lefties than righties. So you have those negatives, but he's $7,600. I'd be a lot more concerned about the way the Twins lineup looks if you were talking about a $9K or $9,500 Lance Lynn. You don't need to nitpick that much when you're getting this kind of discount on him. So he looks good. Ryan obviously looks good as well.
Yeah, and it's also worth pointing out that Minnesota, all of that stuff with Lance Lynn against lefties, and you could see 6 of them today, is not good. But then on the opposite side of the coin, Minnesota's active roster this year has a 28.3% strikeout rate versus right-handed pitching. 28. Right, yeah. Real quick. The next closest team is Seattle at 24.5. You realize how ridiculous that is? They're 4% higher than the next closest team.
Oh, yeah. They strike out a ton. They also have the 7th highest WRC plus against right-handed pitching and a 187 ISO.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying it's a mixed bag. Lynn could give up 5 runs and strike out 11. Yeah,
and which leads into I do like Lynn, but Minnesota's not a bad stack either in tournaments.
Not at all.
We have them getting about 5% ownership. They were the 5th highest owned stack in my Sims video earlier, around I think 6 or 7%. But they have a lot of power here, and they're really cheap. So, Buxton and Correa are not. But other than that, this team is free. So this is another team where you can do whatever you want around them. You can go Ohtani Valdez, you can go Acuna Olsen one-offs, or 2-man, whatever it may be, and just have all of this power with $2,200 Kirilov, $2,600 Kepler, $2K flat Matt Wallner, $3K Gallo, $3,100 Julian. Like the pricing here is just so cheap that I like both sides here between Lynn and the Twins. It's sort of similar to the Yankees game where obviously Lynn's not as inexpensive as Schmidt or Marsh, but at 7,600 with the strikeout stuff Lynn has, for him not to pay off that salary, he probably gave up like 5+ runs. And if the Twins score 5+ runs at those prices, there's some useful pieces in there.
Yeah, no question. Really fascinating spot with Lynn going up against all these lefties that just strike out at a high clip, but have like, I think as far as as far as ISO goes, they're also like, a middle of the league. Minnesota's 7th in ISO against righties too. So there's power, high WRC plus, and then a strikeout rate that is just head and shoulders above any other team in the league versus righties. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, ideally, if you're playing a lot of lineups, you really wouldn't hate just having a lot of both. Minnesota stacks and in non-Minnesota stacks having a decent amount of Lance Lynn.
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable to be getting to both sides here.
Pittsburgh and LA Angels, Johan Oviedo, Shohei Ohtani. Let's talk about it. Pittsburgh plus 155 here. Oviedo getting 8% ownership today. A lot of this a result of how cheap he is, 5,700, only 6% top 2 probability, but he is very cheap, sub 6K against the Angels. How much of him do you think you find yourself getting to?
Probably around the field. He's just another guy where like Schmidt projects better, but you probably don't want to put everything into the Schmidt basket, especially if you are playing some Kansas City on the other side. Oviedo's fine. Nothing exciting. Tough park to pitch in, park downgrade going from Pittsburgh. You don't have Mike Trout, which is nice. He's just sort of there. He should be like 6,700, 7K instead of 5,700 overall this year. 20% strikeout percentage, 4.56 xFIP. He's just underpriced, but it's not like it's a spot that you're actively targeting him.
Okay. Are you getting to the other side of this one for pitching?
Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
He has a 33% ownership, 24% top 2 probability against Pitts. I mean, and realistically, 11,000 for how we've seen other pitchers of this caliber priced isn't even that crazy at all.
No, and especially again in the context of this slate, if you pair him with Schmidt, you're spending 17.2K at pitcher, and that opens up most things for you. But also, you have so many good offenses that are like 3K across the board. It's really not prohibitive at all. Leads the slate with a 32% strikeout percentage. That's 2 points higher than Senga. 3.53 xFIP. The only thing that has really worked against Ohtani this year, one is his blisters / cracked fingernails. But assuming that he has that in check, he has had some issues with left-handed production, left-handed power, 207 expected ISO to lefties, but he still has a 30% strikeout percentage. And we don't have Pittsburgh's lineup yet, but all they can really offer in the way of true left-handed power is Jack Sawinski and Brian Reynolds. So overall, it sets up as a pretty good spot for Ohtani. It is a good hitter's park. Looks like the wind is blowing out a bit. It's warm, so again, that stuff's working against him. That's why you see a 3.4 implied run total for the Pirates as opposed to like 3.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what the one knock against Ohtani here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are his home and road splits as a pitcher significant this season?
I have no idea.
Me neither. Just wonder. I mean, it's not going to keep you from playing him at all, but.
Yeah. I mean, I can find out in a second. It takes extra time since you have to make sure you're on pitching, but.
I know.
Okay. So 264 Woba allowed at home, 321 on the road.
What Woba at home? 264?
Yeah, 264 at home, 321 on the road. 34% strikeout percentage at home, 29.5 on the road.
Been a lot better at home.
3.32 xFIP at home, 3.83 on the road.
Been a decent amount better at home. I mean, not.
Yeah, I don't know where his road starts have been.
True. Yeah, but I'm just saying that this hasn't kept him from piecing together a ton of phenomenal performances. Anyway, Do you have interest in LA bats against Oviedo here today? I can't imagine we're getting to much Pittsburgh, but any Angel bats you're looking at?
It's tough since you can't roster Ohtani as a hitter. There is some value. Zach Neto's leading off at 3K. Mickey Moniak looks pretty good, batting third at 4,100. It is a big park downgrade for Oviedo. He has allowed a 192 expected ISO to lefties this year. It's just that you don't really need more value bats on this slate. But if you get the Moniak, Moustakas, Tice, any of those guys are fine, but I don't anticipate getting a lot of the Angels.
Okay. Houston and Oakland. Oh, before we do, Underdog Fantasy. Adam and I were talking about best ball. I'm getting some more drafts in tonight for sure. Without question, trying to get some more in today. But for their pick'em contest, they have the, what's it called? Like the flash boosts, I think, where all of their pick'em cards are juiced significantly in your favor. So like, all right, here's an example. Normally, if you were to play a 5-pick play, if you were to play 5 picks on their pick'em, it's 20x if you hit them all. It's 25x now. So they have payout boosters on Joe Ryan, on Shohei Ohtani, on Framber Valdez, on Yusei Kikuchi. 4 of them today. Okay, wow. All of that's interesting. All of them home runs allowed. Kikuchi, Valdez, Ohtani, and Ryan. Half a home run allowed, higher or lower with the payout boosters on these. Man, we did the payout booster. We had the payout booster with Jokic, and it was the most they did like a 100x payout booster. It was a $5 limit, but it was 100x. And Josh and I did a video, the live before live, our deeper dive, put together a card. It ended up hitting, and there were so many $500 screenshots off a $5 investment that it was a beautiful day. But yeah, if you're not on Underdog yet, the best ball contest, $15 million prize pool. First of all, $25 to enter. You can 150 max that. Then they've got a lot of other ones too, like the puppy, $5 to enter. They had one that was $3 to enter as well. And then their pick'em contest with these payout boosters, with the flash boosts. Get in on it. More than anything though, when you sign up, your first deposit up to $100 is matched at 100%. I'll stop talking. I could talk about Underdog Fantasy all day because for me, it's best ball, but the pick'em format's awesome too. I can't play it in PA, but everything they've got going on. They got the daily contest too for baseball, for football, for basketball. Neil and I did a lot of Underdog shows, but if you want to get $100, just add it onto your account. If you deposit 100 or an additional 20, if you throw 20 in, link in the description and in chat. I look at it this way, Adam. If I put 100 in, that means I could have entered the Best Ball Mania 4 times. Now I can enter it 8 times. That's how I look at it.
Yep. Good way to look at it.
It is a good way to look at it. You're literally doubling your entries out of the gate. Or $5 $20 pick and plays. Now you got 10. All right, let's close this one out. Link in the description for Underdog. If you're not there yet, you probably are. Everyone's an Underdog. Houston and Oakland, Framber Valdez, JP Sears, 7.5 total here. Houston minus 250 on the road against Houston today. Not all that surprising. Framber Valdez, 39% owned on DraftKings, the highest owned pitcher on the slate. On FanDuel, you've got Valdez at 20% ownership, but that's only because he's $1,000 more expensive than Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, the pricing difference on FanDuel is noteworthy and interesting to talk about. Valdez is still a really good play, but you're just getting him at that elevated price tag. He's one of the best starting pitchers in baseball and has a great matchup here. The A's have a 2.8 implied run total, lowest on the slate. Good pitcher's park, terrible offense. A's active roster this year, lowest WRC plus against left-handed pitching by a mile at 79. Next worst is the Rockies at 87. They have a 22.5% strikeout percentage. Valdez has always been a good pitcher, been good at getting ground balls, been good at working relatively deep into games. This year, he's striking guys out too. 27.4% K percentage, only a 5.9% walk percentage, 0.7 home runs per 9, 2.89 xFIP. Really, really, really good pitcher. Neck and neck with Ohtani for the top spot.
What about JP Sears? How about him today? He's pulling a nice 0.7% ownership. Massive, massive dog. I mean, Houston's minus 250 on the road today.
Yeah, he's got decent strikeout stuff and is in a good park, but pretty tough to make a case for getting to him when you have other cheap pitching in better spots.
He's
Yeah, so
8,600. Yeah, he's not. It's not like he's discounted.
right, yeah, and it's not. Yeah, it's not like you're getting the Cutter Crawford 5,500 because you're in a tough matchup price.
How are we approaching it? Houston bats let a lot of people down throughout that Coors Field series. You know,
And yesterday,
unquestioned. What's that?
and yesterday,
And yesterday. But, you know, it doesn't mean you just stop going to them, especially in a 162 game season. Weird shit's going to happen. But like you said, Sears isn't a bad pitcher, though. Is this one of those spots where you'd potentially have interest in getting to a lower owned Houston stack at 4% right now?
yeah, they showed up a good amount in the Sims video earlier. This is another spot where, like, if I get to them, great. I don't have a problem with it. I kind of would like to not get as much just because I do hate this park. And the lineup is not as good when you don't have Altuve and you don't have Alvarez. That's obviously a big deal. But Dubon, Pena, Tucker, Bregman, Abreu in particular are all still going to look good. Then you get some cheap bats toward the bottom of the order with McCormick, Julks. Diaz as a catcher option is pretty solid as well. So Sears has allowed a 238 expected ISO to righties this year to go along with his 24.5% strikeout percentage. So they are going a little bit under-owned. Again, I hate the park. I ideally would just kind of like probably be around the field on the Astros and maybe be getting to some offenses in better parks. But if they show up, that's fine. It's still a good enough offense and a good enough matchup. And also Oakland's bullpen. Also, Oakland's bullpen is terrible. So after Sears, you also just have a ton of really bad arms coming in. And it's even weaker now than it had been because they traded probably their best reliever to the Orioles.
Oakland, top stack probability in our top stack tool over at Stochastic, 0.5%, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely brutal spot.
That's all that needs to be said. Let's wrap it up with Toronto, Seattle. Turn this one over to Neil and Greg. They're going to take you up until lock tonight. Live before lock, baby. You said Kikuchi, Bryce Miller, 8-run total here. Toronto minus 105. Actually, slight dogs to Seattle in Seattle. Kikuchi and Bryce Miller. So, all right, Kikuchi ownership is very low, 8,600. I'm sorry, that's FanDuel. I was looking at FanDuel. Where's he at on DraftKings? What, 5%? So yeah, still not a ton here. Do you want to get to any Kikuchi in this spot? We've talked about a lot of pitchers. It's the last game we have. How does he kind of slot in amongst all of the other ones? Because there are some decent options today.
Yeah, pretty comparable to Andrew Heaney. They project similarly. They're similarly priced. They're similarly owned. It's a dangerous matchup in that the Mariners do have a lot of power from the right side. Kikuchi does have a lot of issues with home runs and power in general. 227 expected ISO to righties this year, 215 to lefties. But you are in the best pitchers park in baseball. You are facing a team that has strikeouts in their lineup. The Mariners against left-handed pitching this year have the 8th best WRC plus at 116, or sorry, this going back to the start of last year at 116. But they also have a 24.5% strikeout percentage. And Kikuchi does strike guys out. He has a 24.3% strikeout percentage this year to go along with his 2 home runs per 9 innings. So pretty big boom or bust spot, kind of like Heaney, except he at least does have a better strikeout matchup than Heaney does. So the 5% ownership makes sense. You know, if you come in around like 10% or something, there's nothing wrong with that either, but still a very dangerous matchup against the Mariners.
Do you have any interest on the other side of this one in Bryce Miller? He's very low on north of $9,000 as well.
I think he's a more difficult sell than Kikuchi just because it's kind of similar to Kodai Senga. Senga has much better strikeout stuff than Miller, but yeah, he's a good enough pitcher. He's 9,100. He's in a good park, but he has a really tough matchup with Toronto. Not only are they good at hitting, but they also are difficult to strike out. It's just really tough to make a strong case for Miller.
All right, we'll close it out with some bats here. Toronto and Seattle bats grading out. Seattle's at 2% top stack probability. Toronto at 3%. A lot of these games, and I'm broken record with this, but and there's also been some pretty good pitchers going in Seattle and against Seattle recently. But how many 7.5 run totals have we seen in these Seattle games? And of course, very favorable pitchers park, 8-run total today, not particularly high. But last thing I'll say on this, there's actually a decent amount of games that have relatively lower totals for late July. Any interest in bats today?
Yeah, I've been playing the Mariners recently, even against like Pablo Lopez and Bailey Ober, just because they've gotten so cheap on DraftKings. And yes, the park sucks for power, and it's, you know, they can strike out against Kikuchi, but Julio Rodriguez, 4,900 on DraftKings. The next most expensive guy in this projected lineup is Teoscar Hernandez at 3,300. No Jared Kelenic because he broke his foot kicking a water cooler, but you're still going to get a solid middle of the order. Rodriguez, Suarez, Hernandez, France, probably have Tom Murphy in there, might have Cal Raleigh, either way. Some upside at catcher. And Kikuchi does give up a lot of power. So the value component here is pretty nice. Not that you're short on value stacks today, but it's just another team that has a lot of power going up against a pitcher that gives it up. So not a huge priority, especially because of the park, but I do like the upside they offer.
Doing anything good this weekend?
Nothing at all.
Enjoy it. Sometimes that's the best type of weekend.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and especially because last weekend was rough with friend's birthday. So
there was a question earlier. Would you rather fight a hippo on coke? This was from chat, or a silverback on meth?
Hippo on coke.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a silverback on meth, he's just try and have sex with you.
Well, and also just like not take any, not that you can inflict damage anyway, but
I know it's a natural consequence of meth. So I've heard. Anyway, appreciate you guys. Follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS, me at Laffy_D. Neil, Greg coming up next. This has been the Deeper Dive presented by Underdog Fantasy. I'm going to go get some best ball drafts in. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful weekend. We'll catch you back here on Monday. You're here tomorrow morning, right? Or tomorrow?
Yeah. I didn't even know what tomorrow was, but yes.
Saturday? Saturday, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Shout out to Jordan Klein for producing this one as well. We'll see you guys back here for the next one. Peace. Yo, it's that time of week again. Time to induct some of you wonderful people into the Stochastic Hall of Fame here, and also give away a whole bunch of free subscriptions to Stochastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, and all you got to do to get in on this fun, crowning achievement, gather the family around, say, honey, I'm in the Stochastic Hall of Fame. Come watch. They're about to announce my name. Go to stochastic.com/avatar. Download the Stochastic profile picture. Tweet your wins when you win at Stochastic HOF on Twitter and win a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Get inducted right here. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and boom, you are in. Just like our friend Zach Skaggs, the ever elusive double win. Thank you to the crew and all the tools over at Stochastic. Not getting the free month, but representing Stochastic here. I can appreciate that. 2,250 here in the squeeze and the line drive. Shout out to Zach for a really nice day. And our friend Kenneth Malakar. I don't know what to say. I want to thank all you guys for all the good advice, not to mention all of you guys in chat. Great community of people. Finally, the Hall of Fame, 3rd out of 7,400, $1,000 for a boy who has supported the channel and the site for a long time now. Congrats, Kenneth. We love to see it. And Timmy, first off, Laffy, I'm gonna be up here a lot now, so get it down. The TX is like a CH. So basically, Cha Kiang, listen, dude, I'm going to be doing this a lot as well, and I can assure you I will not get this down anytime soon, but congrats to Timmy. Love to see it. But, man, not a lot to most y'all, but I'm going to say this. I know nothing about golf, but making nice finishes goes to show you how it's getting done. Pay the man. $800 and a free month of Stochastic. Congrats, Timmy. I'm just kidding. Timmy Chakiang. And then how about Derby status or Perez status? Second day playing DFS, and I ship the $1 25K mini max for $2,500 and place second in the $3 MLB 20K moonshot for $1,000. All thanks to Stochastic and the guys there with the great insight and the MLB lineup generator. $4.48 for your first week. You know it. Link in the description, baby. Keith, I'm gonna need a punch card at this rate. Yeah, he's been up a lot lately. Keith, $300 in the 7,500 solo shot. Next up is Matt. Shout out to the team at Stochastic for helping me out last night. 350 win there in the 10K Wednesday MLB pinch hit. And we keep moving forward with David Colasanto. Almost hit a 4-figure payout twice in a week. I'll settle for second place and a $200 ROI. Thanks again for the advice. Hell yeah, man. Second place out of 7,100 in the mini max. Take that all day long. And Nate Larson, not enough entries to qualify for the free month, but shout out to the lineup generator. 2 of the top spots. I've said it a million times, guys, whether it's high stakes, low stakes, we got you covered. Just like internet points or it's depletes. Not quite enough to retire early, but who needs that when there's the Stochastic Hall of Fame? See this $25 and $8.50 in the nickel $600 prize pool, first out of 14,000. But as long as it's top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and you're not chopping more than 3 ways, you're in. $120 free month. What better way to do it than that in some of these low stakes contests? Shout out to It's the Plates 99 and everybody else. Welcome to the Hall of Fame. You've now been inducted, or welcome back if you've been here before. Remember, download the Stochastic profile picture at stochastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at StochasticHOF and get that free month and get inducted every single Monday right here in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
What is happening, everybody? It is Friday, almost time for the weekend. But first, very important that Neil Orfield and I break down tonight's MLB slate, and going to be an interesting one. We got a bunch of different spots to choose from. It's not going to be like yesterday's 3-game slate or anything like that, where I felt really good early. We saw the Baltimore Orioles getting to Tyler Glass. Now I thought that was a reasonable way to differentiate, and then kind of trailed off as the game went along. And then it was just the chalk Houston Astros came through in a big way, which happens sometimes also on 3-game slates. But today, breaking down a bigger slate where ownership a little bit more spread out also, although some pitching options for Neil and I to break down as you guys come in. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also check out Underdog. Have you seen this promo they have going on for today, Neil?
I have not seen the promo that's going on for today.
All right. So they have what is called a flash deal here. So you've got a couple of different boosts that you have. You can only put $10 on it, but still something to definitely take advantage of. If you are signing up over there, use the promo code Stochastic, which is going to get you up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit and free access to all of our best ball and fantasy football draft kit for this year. But here are how the flash boosts work. If you do a 2-leg play over there, 4x your money, 3-leg, 8x your money, 4-leg, 13x your money, and then a 5-leg, 25x your money. So you're getting good boosted odds over at Underdog. We'll be talking a little bit more about them later and looking through the projections we have for Underdog. Hopefully find you some props that you could use to really take advantage of these boosts. But don't forget, promo code Stochastic when you're signing up for the first time. Neil, more important than anything we're probably going to be talking about on this entire show, though, yesterday was the season finale, which is what I'm going to call it. It was the season finale of your softball league. How did the finale go?
Not great, Greg. We finished this. I mean, it went okay. So we finished with a loss. So from that perspective, not great. But
hold up. How could it go okay? And they're like, we lost.
So it went poor. It went poorly. We lost the game. We were playing the best team in the league. So it's the team that we know it's going to be an uphill battle playing them every time we play them. We only lost by 1. So from that perspective, it's the closest that we played them in the 3 games that we had against them. It was that we were also missing, I think, definitely our second best player, probably our third best player, and then a couple others as well. So we were playing with a lot of subs yesterday, which kind of happens to my team in July. People go on vacations, a lot of campers in the groups. A lot of people are on camping vacations late in the year. So
as is the issue for many professional sports teams. Yeah,
exactly. Teams like ours that take it very seriously. Sometimes, you got to go camping to get in the right mind space. So we lost. I got my 2 hits, so I had another multi-hit game. So I think I ended the season batting over 500 for the first time in my career. My crowning achievement, my final pitch of the night. So we needed to get 3 quick outs. The ump had told us the next game is starting soon. If you get them out quick, then you can come up to bat again. And we were down 3 at the time. So if you get them out, I got 1, 2, 3 final inning, and my third batter He got 2 balls on me to start, and then I struck him out looking. So that was really felt good. And then I came up to bat we got 2 runs. I came up to bat with 0 outs, a guy on second, and I struck out. And it was just, so I went from like the most beautiful ending you could possibly have as a pitcher to the worst possible final at bat. So mixed bag.
And we do have Obi-Wan is asking in the YouTube chat, how many runs did you allow yesterday?
I allowed 17 runs yesterday.
Not great. Not great. They want to hear, by the way, don't forget, this started with Neil saying it went okay yesterday. Now we found out he lost. He gave up 17 runs as a pitcher, and he struck out in his final at bat of the season.
I went 2 for 4. Okay.
And
That's
your
not bad.
final at bat of the season was a strikeout, which really put a nail in the coffin of your season. But luckily, you did get your third place Welder's trophy that wards away vampires that you have to proudly. Do you have that next to you?
No, because it's actually a game MVP trophy.
Garbage.
So I had to give it to the MVP of the game last night, who just our best player was, as usual, made a lot of great plays.
Wait, so you have one participation trophy for the entire team that you share?
We have, so it's not actually a trophy for the team. It is a game MVP trophy that we pass around each week. It's a new tradition this year.
Oh my God. All right. Well, anyway, we're not going to be able to stack against Neil on tonight's slate because he is not on it. It seems like that would be pretty favorable if we were able to do that. We're also going to have to talk about other pitchers to roster. We're going to be fading Neil for DFS purposes today, but real life pitchers to talk about as well here, Neil. And let's start at the high end where we have got a couple of stud starting pitchers who are expensive and also in pretty decent matchups. We have Shohei Ohtani pitching against the Pittsburgh Pirates. We have Framber Valdez pitching against the Oakland A's. Of these 2 pitchers, Neil, if you could only roster one, which would be your preference?
Probably have to be Shohei Ohtani, just the better pitcher. I mean, the matchup not quite as good as pitching in Oakland, but he 25% chance of being a top 2 pitcher to 22, getting a little bit less ownership than Framber Valdez. He's 200 more expensive, but in the end, higher odds, lower ownership, only $200 difference. Give me Shohei Ohtani of those 2. How about you?
Yeah, for both of them, I'm getting to more exposure to Shohei. And, of the both of them, they're both going to be popular. I think it's generally warranted as well. You got a big slate. There's a lot of value options. It's not going to be massively hard to spend up for pitching. And I don't really see an abundance of cheap pitching options I love on this slate either. So with that in mind, I really don't mind spending up for pitcher today. We'll talk about some cheap options we like getting to. But of the 2, I'm going to lean towards Shohei Ohtani. I understand the matchup that Framber Valdez has against Oakland is the easier one because Oakland, I mean, what's more of a dog shit offense this year than the Oakland A's? But there's more strikeout upside in Shohei Ohtani. He's also pitching at home, whereas Framber Valdez is pitching on the road, which is also something that plays a little bit more in the favor of Shohei Ohtani. So I'm leaning towards Ohtani, both of them, though. If you guys are playing in cash games, by the way, spend up for both these guys. It's not really a hard thing to do, is going out and finding the space to roster both Shohei Ohtani and Framber Valdez in cash games. Tournaments, you can make a case for both of them. I'm going to be leaning towards Shohei, though. And now the other side of this, Neil, if you want to be a little bit more contrarian, spend up for a pitcher that is not Ohtani or Valdez. Is there anybody that catches your attention? I know we don't have a ton of other high-priced pitching options. We got Joe Ryan at 9,600. We got Kodai Senga at 9,600. Bryce Miller at 9,100. Do any of those guys capture your imagination? Or is it just if you're going to get different from those chalky pitchers, you're going to go cheaper?
I'm definitely willing to play some Joe Ryan against the White Sox. I think he's, pretty clearly, maybe not pretty clearly, but I have 15% Joe Ryan right now. So I'm not playing like a ton. I'm pretty close to the field's at 22%. So I guess I'm underweight to the field on Joe Ryan, but certainly have no issue with Joe Ryan if you want to get even above weight to the field. Very, very talented young pitcher in Joe Ryan. Senga looks fine. I mean, Senga going really low owned at 2.5% ownership, 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Not the best matchup with Boston, but especially in Fenway, but still willing to play Kodai Senga. If I were only playing one of them, it would be Joe Ryan, but in a lineup where you're otherwise playing the chalk, it certainly makes sense to go to really low owned Kodai Senga. He's kind of a very boom bust pitcher, and at under 3% ownership, I'd sign up for that in a chalky lineup.
Yeah, none of these pitchers are really ones that I'm getting to. Let's see. Yeah, I don't have significant exposure to any of them. There's some that I have in there, but I'm looking through this and I get to more of Shohei Ohtani, more to Framber Valdez. If I'm trying to get different at pitcher, we'll talk about some lower owned and lower priced options that make sense. There's a couple issues I have with Kodai Senga. First of all, we have started to project him a little bit differently. If you remember, there was a really long period of time where if you were running lineups, particularly through our sims or just looking at our projections, we were really high on Senga, and we have come down a little bit on our outlook on him. So there used to be a point in time where Senga we would have still projected similarly to some of the top arms on the slate. Not the case for us today. We haven't projected for right around 15 fantasy points, which definitely makes a difference when you're running lineups through any of our data. And then also you get the fact that there's weather concerns here. It's not anything where I think the game is super likely to be canceled, but you just have to consider with weather in the area in Boston, what happens if he pitches 2-3 innings and the rain sets in? Do I think the game finishes? Yes, but might they have to delay for an hour or so? It's a concern, and it's a concern enough to me where I don't really want to take chances on Kodai Senga. I agree with you. If I had to be on one of these guys, it would be Joe Ryan. But ultimately, I don't find the expensive pitching options the way I'm looking to differentiate. We'll talk through some cheaper guys in a second that we'll try to make cases for. But as we go through the rest of the ownership, the next pitcher we should be talking about is Lance Lynn. He's the only pitcher, Lance Lynn and Clark Schmidt. Those are the only other two pitchers that are projected for a significant amount of ownership below Shohei Ohtani and Framber Valdez. But first, let's talk about the mid-range, and we'll talk about the really cheap punt options. But Lance Lynn is $7,600. He's on the road against your Minnesota Twins, projected for nearly 30% ownership. I'm fairly underweight to the field on Lance Lynn, and it really is just because of the ownership, and then also the fact that your Minnesota Twins, while they've been absolutely terrible as of late, I do expect them to start it a little bit better, especially Byron Buxton. Like, he can't continue to be the worst hitter in baseball. Like, I think over the last 3 weeks, it's something like Byron Buxton and Ellie De La Cruz have been like the two least valuable players in all of baseball. And Buxton has enough of a track record. I just don't expect that to continue. There's also been players who've been in and out of the Twins lineup as of late. So you got somebody like Carlos Correa, who's a little bit healthier now. So let's talk through this mid-range, starting with Lance Lynn, who is the most popular. Then we'll answer some super chats and get back to some of the punt options. So I'm underweight to the field on Lance Lynn. Is it the same for you? And are there any other mid-range options you like getting overweight to pivot off of him with?
I'm actually above weight to the field on Lance Lynn. So I built my lineups in lineup generator. And I think part of it is because a lot of my lineups I did end up building with the contrarian setting as I was trying to get different. And I think that he's low enough owned that maybe he fit into some contrarian lineups. His price allowed me to pay up for some bats that were not getting a ton of exposure. So I actually have 35% Lance Lynn. And I'm okay with that. I'm with you. Like, the Twins are going to start hitting better at some point. Buxton clearly needs to turn around, but they do have over 1,000 strikeouts already this year. They are leader in the clubhouse as far as strikeouts by a wide margin this year. And, it probably will turn around at some point, but doesn't mean it has to turn around today. Lance Lynn, certainly a capable strikeout pitcher. So I actually don't mind having a good amount of Lance Lynn against this Twins team. And I don't know that I would have gotten to 35% using my classic method, but I'm okay with it. Like, I'm not trying to get away from 35% Lance Lynn. So I actually don't mind the ownership there. He has a 15% chance of being a top two pitcher. Looks okay. Freddie Peralta, I don't think I have any. I drafted him a couple times, and actually this is a good opportunity. Greg, I should mention because I was just playing before we started doing the daily contests on Underdog, since you were talking about they have that great deal. If you're signing up for Underdog, they also we're looking at some overlay today in the $5 daily contest on Underdog. I believe. I don't know if maybe it really fills up closer to lock, but I was doing a bunch of those before I got on the show. It's a lot of fun because people don't really stack, and I kind of feel like it's the best place for me to get my money. I actually did a thread about it on Twitter yesterday, but I'm seeing, like, I think we might have overlay there. I could be wrong. It could be that it's going to fill up, but I've drafted a decent amount of Lance Lynn there. You can typically get him as one of your last pitchers. So I've kind of relying on Lance Lynn a little bit there, as well as on DraftKings today. I think that 7,600 is just a little bit too low of a price tag. He does look like he's a little bit over-owned in the top pitcher stool, 27% projected ownership, 15% chance of being a top two pitcher, but still at 7,600, I'm willing to go there as one of my cheap pitchers. Freddie Peralta, as I said, I drafted him once or twice in those contests. It's obviously a tough matchup with Atlanta, but if he's on, I think Freddie Peralta can do well against anybody coming in at 11% ownership, 12% chance of being a top two pitcher. So I don't mind going there as well. I drafted a couple of shares of Kikuchi. Don't feel super strongly about it. A little bit of positive leverage in the top pitchers tool, 5% ownership, 9% chance of being a top two pitcher. So Kikuchi seems fine in the mid range. Haney, I guess I assume you consider Haney mid range at 7,200. He's, I guess, a little bit more of a value option. Terrible matchup for Haney, but I still think he could spike a strikeout upside here. So 4% ownership, 9% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. I'm okay going there as well. I don't know that I'm going to.
By the way,
go ahead.
Over on Underdog, we've got potential for overlay here. I looked it up, wanted to make sure we got the update here, and we've got here over on Underdog. And by the way, because the contest, this isn't like DraftKings or FanDuel because you have to do the drafts. So it doesn't lock right at the start of lock time. It actually locks in 25 minutes, and it's only 65% full right now. So I actually do think there's a pretty good chance it's going to overlay over at Underdog. If you guys want to sign up, use the promo code Stochastic. We talk about the perks of that. Up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. And that great flash deal they have going on right now. We're going to be getting better payouts. Sorry, wanted to cut you off a little bit there because you're rattling off a lot of pitchers and wanted to break it up a little bit so it doesn't get too jumbled for everybody there. But really to summarize, if you had to play one pitcher who is going to be contrarian in the mid-range, so we'll call Lance Lynn the chalky option. If you're going to be contrarian in the mid-range, who'd be the one contrarian option, just to summarize it?
We're going to go to one contrarian option in the mid-range, and I don't even know that I would necessarily recommend going to any contrarian options in the mid-range, but if I were to go to one, probably Freddie Peralta.
Yeah, it's Andrew Heaney for me, despite the really difficult matchup, and it's just because of the strikeout upside. Andrew Heaney's a high variance pitcher, an easy matchup. You don't know what the hell you're going to get out of this guy, but he is somebody who's capable to have gaudy strikeout numbers, and he's relatively cheap on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So I'd rather play him on DraftKings. I don't really think he's a necessary risk on FanDuel on a single pitcher site, but I do have double-digit exposure to Andrew Heaney. So at $7,200 on DK, I think he's a very viable SP2 option. Now we got some super chats building up, so let's answer these, and then we'll go ahead and talk about some of the cheap punt options that we could hit on. But first, Red Skittles, help, Greg and Neil. I went to the bar. You're off to a good start. Then he wants to know best stacks. So I could tell you the stack that I have the most exposure to by a pretty wide margin today is the Arizona Diamondbacks. That is absolutely my favorite stack of the day. Neil, do you have any stacks that you're getting way more of than anything else?
Yeah, so the top stack I actually have exposure to just because I was going contrarian. I actually have 30% of the Yankees, which I don't know if they're the top stack that I would recommend. I'm with you on the Diamondbacks and the Reds in that game. I think that's just the best game environment overall. I targeted those more when I was drafting, but for DFS, I do have a good amount of the Yankees, and I think it's just because they're coming in with really low ownership, so they look good from that perspective.
The Yankees are my second most rostered team.
Okay, that makes
so no issue with that at all. Yeah, so I have the Diamondbacks won, and the Diamondbacks won by like a fairly wide margin for me, and the Yankees are the team I get the second most exposure to. So I'm not going to call the Diamondbacks super chalky. Like, they are fairly popular today, but ownership is pretty spread out at offense today. We have the Diamondbacks projected for 9% ownership. The only team on the entire slate that has double-digit ownership is the San Francisco Giants. Beyond them, everything else you're looking at single-digit ownership. So 9.3% for the Diamondbacks. I guess I'll call them my chalkier stack that I like, but still not crazy ownership there. And then like you, if I'm being a little bit more contrarian, we've got the Yankees projected for 5.9% ownership as a team against the Kansas City Royals and Alec Marsh. So same page. I like the Yankees in my contrarian stack. It is the lesser-owned team that I'm getting the most exposure to. So Red Skittles, hope that helps you out with your lineups. And now I've got our guy Ace of Spade here. Wants to know our favorite options for DK tiers. I'm not sure if Josh did or didn't build out tiers.
I've got it up. I've got it up already.
All right. So let's dig into it then. Tier 1 for me, got Ronald Acuna in tier 1. That's almost always going to be the option when he's available to me. But what does Josh have?
So kind of surprisingly, so he does have Acuna edging out Elly De La Cruz. He has Acuna 29.2%, Elly De La Cruz 29.1%. So De La Cruz looking good in Josh's model.
Yeah, I mean, Ellie's been a great fantasy producer this year. I don't want to shit on him too much. He's really fun to watch. He's the best prospect that I think we have in baseball right now. But there's still the reality that he has a 100 WRC plus, so that's exactly league average, and a BABIP north of 400. So you just have, if you're reasonably projecting him out, and you're doing it based on the data, not based on feelings, not based on the eye test, if you just heard that a guy's a 400 BABIP, you're expecting that to regress going forward. I was looking up the other day. I think in the history of that we have BABIP recorded, it's like since 1945. I think there's 4 hitters that have had an entire season of a BABIP north of 400. It's going to regress. And we consider that right now he's rating out as a league average hitter to this point. And then if he's going to regress, where does that leave him going forward? As a great prospect, but maybe not one who's going to light the league on fire this year right now. So I do like Ellie, but for tiers, when your options are like Ellie De La Cruz or Ronald Acuna, yeah, I'm going to take Acuna over him in tier 1. Tier 2, what does Josh have there?
Josh has Corey Seager in tier 2.
Okay. It is also Corey Seager for me as well. Tier 3, what does Josh have there?
Corbin Carroll by a mile.
Yeah, Corbin Carroll for me as well. So, we talk about young prospects, and maybe Corbin Carroll doesn't go in the prospect bin anymore because he's been up here for a little while. But I think Corbin Carroll almost gets slept on at this point because people have been so hyped on Elliott. Corbin Carroll's having a ridiculous year. I think he's like 3rd in the NL MVP betting odds right now.
Insane.
So yeah, Corbin Carroll just having an insane year. He's got power, he's got speed, and I don't really see anything in his numbers that's all that unsustainable. Corbin Carroll for me in tier 3, and there are more Diamondbacks we could get to in more tiers. So like tier 4, I have Ketel Marte as my best option. Christian Walker second. You get a little bit of correlation there with Corbin Carroll. How about Josh's tier 4? What did he have there?
Yep, it's the exact same 1-2, Marte and then Walker.
All right. Tier 5. What does Josh have sticking out in tier 5?
He's got Pete Alonso number 1.
Tier 5 is pretty spread out to me. There's a lot of guys that are fairly close. I am going to go, I've got Devers and Alonso really close here. You can't even have the tiebreaker be the weather because they're in the same game playing against each other. Just to take the opposite side, I'll say Devers, but I think Devers and Alonso both good options in tier 5. What does Josh have in tier 6 now?
Josh has Francisco Lindor in tier 6.
It is also Francisco Lindor in tier 6 for me. So maybe also I backtrack and I say Alonso in tier 5 just because we're getting extra correlation with Lindor in tier 6. So that's another way to look at it. But yeah, definitely some stacks we could be making. Tier 3 and tier 4. You could go to the Diamondbacks. Tier 5 and tier 6. You could go to the Mets. And then tier 1 and tier 2. You just got a shit ton of really good players to consider there. Next super chat that we have here is from Rob Strom. Rob wants to know thoughts on a Brewers San Francisco stack with Framber and Senga. So for me, I'm pretty sure the team the stack I'm most underweight to today is actually the San Francisco Giants. And it just really has to do with this is the only team on the entire slate that's projected for double-digit ownership. And I do get concerned about some of the pinch hit risks for the Giants, especially when they are this popular, right? The most popular team on the entire slate. As for the Brewers, I don't mind them. Framber, I think, is a good option. Senga, we talked about him as a viable contrarian play. But with that said, I'm not really into Senga because of some of the weather concerns. So, Rob, all things put together, Senga a little bit too risky to me considering the weather. And then San Francisco stack a little bit too popular for me. Are you getting 2 Giant stacks tonight?
I do have some. Let me see what the percentage. I've got 25% Giant stack. So when I was drafting on Underdog, I really didn't take the Giants much because they are just for me. It's the hardest click for me, knowing that there is that pinch hit risk. I always struggle to take the Giants when they look good in the tools. But using the lineup generator, I got to 25% Giant stacks. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm gonna eat it and hope for the best.
Yeah, it's a very good spot for them. I suspect that if they were a little bit lower owned, I would be getting to more of them. But alas, they aren't lower owned, so don't get quite as much of them. And by the way, James Perkins said, does Carroll win the Rookie of the Year award in the National League? He's like minus 1,000 to win the Rookie of the Year right now. I would be stunned if he didn't. There was a point where there was a ton of value on Corbin Carroll a couple of weeks ago with all of the Ellie craze, where Corbin Carroll was, I think, got down to like minus 250 to win Rookie of the Year, as Ellie got to like plus 400. But now once the second half of the year started and some of the regression hit Ellie, we now have it at Corbin Carroll minus 700 and Ellie De La Cruz plus 950. So pretty hard for me to think that Corbin Carroll wouldn't win at this point, barring an injury, which you never know. He's had shoulder issues in the past. Let's go back to talking about some of the cheap pitching options, Neil. And there is one chalk cheap pitcher. That is Clark Schmidt, who's projected for 34% ownership over on DraftKings. Good price point on him, obviously. Great matchup against the Kansas City Royals. $6,200 pitching against KC, who suck. I understand why the field is getting to him a whole bunch, but relative to his ownership, are you going to be above the field, underweight to the field, or around even with the field?
I have 20%, so I'm underweight to the field on Clark Schmidt, which seems about right to me. He's coming in, as you said, 34% projected ownership. He has a 22% chance of being a top 2 point per dollar pitcher, 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher overall. That $6,200 price tag, really nice for Clark Schmidt, especially against Kansas City. So I understand why the field is at 34%, but being underweight to the field feels about right to me. I'm happy to be there. What are you doing with Clark Schmidt?
Yeah, so it's funny. He's my most rostered cheap pitcher. And this happens to me all the time. He's my most rostered cheap pitcher. I'm underweight to the field on. I've got ownership to him in the teens. I've got some other pitchers I'm overweight to that I think have similar range of outcomes, but are 1-2% owned. Those pitchers, most notably here, let me sort by my exposure. So here are the cheap pitchers that are projected for considerably less ownership that I think have a comparable range of outcomes to Clark Schmidt. Alex Wood, great match for him against the Washington Nationals. He's projected for 1% ownership at 6,000. And then JP Sears at $6,700 projected for 3% ownership. Tough matchup for him against the Houston Astros, but still somebody we've seen with actual upside. A lot of downside too. He's been pretty inconsistent. His recent box scores, 25 fantasy points, 4, 22, 15, 19. So, a little bit of a range of outcomes, but he's underpriced relative to his strikeout upside at $6,700. So I have comparable exposure to Wood and Sears that I do to Clark Schmidt. But because Schmidt is so much more popular, I think these guys are slightly stronger options in large field tournaments. Is there anything else that's standing out to you at pitcher on DraftKings? And if not, we'll look at some of these pitchers for FanDuel purposes.
I'm just noticing that I got to 1 share of Alec Marsh, and looking at him in the top pitchers pool. I mean, really tough matchup with the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, obviously, but he's 5,000 coming in at 8% ownership, 8% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, but a 30% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher. So I'm not playing a ton, but I did get to 1 share in my 20 lineups of Alec Marsh, and he does look like a pretty decent low cheap option.
And now if we go ahead and we look at the FanDuel pitching options, which obviously the pitching options are the same over on DraftKings, but some of the pricing is different. Framber Valdez and Shohei Ohtani, both good options over on FanDuel. The difference here, though, Shohei Ohtani is only 10,200 over on FanDuel at home against the Pittsburgh Pirates. That is too cheap of a price tag. He's really popular on FanDuel, 33% owned, but I can see why people are getting there. The ownership a little bit steep for me, but at the very least, if you guys are playing cash games, I would go with Shohei Ohtani on FanDuel over Framber Valdez, number one, because he's pitching at home. He's also going to be more popular, so you're just kind of matching the field as far as cash games go. And then also with Shohei Ohtani, you just get the $1,000 price savings. So Shohei Ohtani, your cash game option over on FanDuel, in my opinion. And then also as you look through something I think that's a little bit different for tournament purposes, whereas on DraftKings, Framber Valdez and Shohei Ohtani have comparable ownership. On FanDuel, where Framber Valdez is 17% owned and Ohtani is 33%, I actually prefer Valdez for tournament purposes. Hard to not love the matchup against the Oakland A's, and then also half the ownership of Shohei Ohtani. So when the ownership is similar, I lean towards Ohtani on DraftKings. When Valdez is half the ownership on FanDuel, I like him. But what are you looking at when you see the high-end pitching options on FanDuel? Who do you look at as the best tournament option on the high end?
Yeah, totally agree with you. It's got to be Framber Valdez at, just over half the ownership of Shohei Ohtani. It makes sense that Shohei Ohtani is going to be more owned than Framber Valdez, where he is cheaper than Framber Valdez by 1,000. But given the ownership disparity, it's got to be Framber Valdez as my favorite in GPPs. I'm totally with you that we want to play Shohei in cash for sure. I think it's kind of a no-brainer there. Outside of those two, Joe Ryan is next in terms of top pitcher odds. He's only 800 more expensive than Lance Lynn on FanDuel, only 600 more expensive than Freddie Peralta, less expensive than Kodai Senga. So I think those are the three that I'm most interested in on FanDuel. Do you have any other thoughts beyond those top two?
It's easy enough to spend up a pitcher on FanDuel. It always is. And the Framber Valdez, such a good match for him against the Oakland A's and, reasonable 17% ownership. If I'm looking to be, a little bit more different on FanDuel, though, and then also when you're looking at some of the FanDuel pricing too, is like Andrew Heaney, somebody we like for cheap over on DraftKings. He's $8,300 on FanDuel matchup against the Dodgers. It's harder to get to him when he's $8,300 over on FanDuel. And then the really cheap pitchers on FanDuel is like Jake Irvin, Cutter Crawford. I don't really love them. If I had to go with a punt that I liked on DraftKings, I also like on FanDuel, Alex Wood at $6,700. He is the second cheapest option on the entire FanDuel slate. There's always concerns about how deep is Alex Wood going to work into games, but it's a good matchup for him against the Nationals, and he's so cheap. And I do think that he's at least somewhat likely to get the win today. So Alex Wood, if I'm going really contrarian on FanDuel at $6,700, that's one that stands out to me. Anything else you want to talk about as far as pitchers go?
So I just want to clarify something because we got the question from Perry in chat asks, is a 50-man tournament a cash game or tournament? So if it's a tournament, that would be so it's a cash game basically means that it is a 50-50 or double up. So it's if you're basically trying to double your money, we call that a cash game. If it's a tournament where like the top prize gets the most money, that's going to be a tournament. So that's the distinction between cash games and tournaments. Did you mention that your guy Andrew Haney is getting 0.5% ownership on FanDuel?
Yes, I did. But
okay.
It's still just kind of a hard mark to get to because it's not the same salary savings getting over on DraftKings. So for me, he would be kind of a no-go. And also, by the way, because somebody in the chat was saying that Houston is not a tough matchup, they have a 108 WRC plus against left-hand pitching. That's well above league average. Tough matchup. Basically, if I'm looking at anything that's above a 100 WRC plus, generally a tough matchup. Anything that's well below 100 WRC plus, easy matchup. Pretty simple in terms of what I consider to be easy or hard matchups. Also, the Houston Astros, to contribute to them being a hard matchup, just justifying why I call them a hard matchup. They have an 18.3% K rate against left-handed pitching. That is last in baseball against southpaw. So they are the toughest team in all of baseball to strike out against lefties. And then they also have a well above average offense against lefties. All things put together, I consider that a tough matchup. Still getting to some of JP Sears at home, like I said before, but that's based on price point and ownership. But if you want to come out and just call me out for nonsense in chat, I'm going to come and back it up with facts from time to time.
Nice.
All right.
Good for you.
Anything else you want to bring up at pitchers here?
I'll just mention that Alex Wood is 6,700. I think, as far as like the pricing goes on FanDuel, he's one of the few that actually like is cheap enough that I might consider playing Alex Wood at 0.5% ownership, 8% chance to be in the top value pitcher on the slate. So maybe a name you could consider just because of the price tag being a lot cheaper than other similar pitchers. But I think for the most part, you're paying up a pitcher on FanDuel.
Yeah. And then also, if anybody has any questions for us in Discord, we could answer some of those as well. I see we just got a super chat about stacks. So Mr. CoolCam97, I see your super chat. We're going to answer in a second because we're about to start talking about stacks. And then we'll hit on your question to open up our stacks conversation. But first, Jordan, let's build some lineups in the MLB lineup generator. We'll build some balanced lineups today, starting with DraftKings and then FanDuel. And we'll see what stands out. And then also this should help highlight some of the core plays that you guys should be building around in tournaments as well. But yeah, Jordan, start with DraftKings and let's build balanced lineups. And also, if you guys haven't signed up for our MLB lineup generator yet, easiest tool to use for beginning DFS players and less than $5 when you sign up for the first time using that link that we have below. Cheapest way you get access to any of the tools we have here over at Stokastic.com. And there's tiers, right? You build yourself up. So you start with the lineup generator, make yourself some money, then start using stuff like our projections, our ownership projections. And then once you've mastered all of that, then you move yourself up to the Sims tool, which is the most advanced tool we have over at Stokastic.com. But the lineup generator we're looking at right here, this is going to be the most beginner-friendly tool that we have over on the site because it builds lineups for you, up to 20 of them, upload them directly to FanDuel or DraftKings. But let's go ahead and look at the stack exposures to start here, Jordan. Team we got the most exposure to is going to be the Arizona Diamondbacks, followed by the San Francisco Giants, the Yankees, the Reds, the Mets there. But Diamondbacks, not dissimilar from my lineups at all. Also, the team I get the most exposure to. One difference for me relative to these lineups is that I'm going to be underweight to the field on the Giants today. As far as exposures go at players, we're getting Ohtani the most at pitcher, followed by Clark Schmidt. Anything you're noticing here, Neil?
We're getting to 56% Jake McCarthy, who is I believe in the 6-hole today. So that is a good amount of a 6-hole hitter. Sticks out to me a little bit, but as we said, we both really like the Diamondbacks as a stack. He's obviously only 3K. So in that game environment, it does make sense. Just, you don't usually get to that much of a 6-hole hitter. And I could be mistaken about where he is, but I mean, in general, I'd say it looks pretty similar to the player. And of course I use lineup generator. So I guess it makes sense. I'm getting similar players to what we're getting in the lineup generator here.
And keep scrolling down, Jordan. I'm kind of curious to see what the other pitchers we're getting to. So Lance Lynn right around even with the field. Framber Valdez right around even with the field. Joe Ryan also. Our pitcher exposures a little bit overweight to Ohtani, but incredibly similar to what the field is doing today, right? Like This isn't where we're differentiating here in the lot, which maybe also that makes sense. Right? We built balanced lineups, and if the pitchers are about appropriately owned, we're going to get more or less. the same exposure the field is getting, because Joe Ryan project for 20% ownership. We got him in 22% of lineups. Framber Valdez project for 30. We got him in 33% of lineups. Some Reds mixed in there. And then scroll back to the top, Jordan. I'm kind of curious just to read off which of the Diamondbacks we got the most of. So Diamondbacks, the team that we had the most exposure to as a stack: Jake McCarthy, Corbin Carroll, Gabriel Moreno, Geraldo Perdomo, and let's see who else. Emmanuel Rivera, Lourdes Gurriel. So yeah, those are the Diamondbacks that we were building the stacks around primarily. Anything else you want to mention here, Neil? If not, we'll go check out the FanDuel lineup generator.
No, yeah, this actually looks very similar to what I'm getting.
All right, there we go. Same here for at least the Diamondbacks part and some of the pitcher exposures. Let's check out balanced FanDuel lineups and see what looks different on FanDuel relative to DraftKings. One thing that is different about FanDuel as opposed to DK, the Diamondbacks are quite a bit more popular. The Diamondbacks, who are projected for 9% exposure as a team on DraftKings, are actually 13.3% on FanDuel. So I'm curious to see how that impacts our stack exposure. It appears not at all based on these initial exposures I'm getting to here. But I do view the Diamondbacks as a less of a good option on FanDuel, just because they're 50% higher owned. You know, the 13% relative to the 9%. So Diamondbacks, when we answer Mr. Coolcam's question in a second here, a team I like a little bit less on FanDuel than I do on DraftKings. But at least in the lineup generator, we're getting to 68% Yankees, 68% Diamondbacks, and the Giants, the Reds, the Phillies, a little bit more spread out behind them. Yankees also way more popular on FanDuel, Neil. So remember, on DraftKings, the Yankees were only 5.9% owned as a team. FanDuel, 12% owned. So all these offenses we're getting to super chalky. 3 teams, double-digit ownership on FanDuel. Diamondbacks being number 1, Yankees second most popular team on FanDuel, Giants third most popular. Those are the teams we got the most stack exposure to there. And this is also going to be highlighted in our individual player exposure as well. Oswaldo Peraza, Corbin Carroll, Anthony Rizzo. Let's see, how far down do we have to go until we get a non-Yankees or Diamondbacks hitter?
Yeah, really.
That's one of our most rostered. Pitcher exposure, primarily Shohei Ohtani and Framber Valdez. No surprises there. Our most
Lamont Wade.
Yeah, Lamont Wade wins as our most exposure to a non-Yankees hitter, or non-Yankees and Diamondbacks hitter here in the lineup generator. So there we have it. Anything else that's standing out to you?
I just want to point out, because I was curious about this. I didn't know exactly what qualifies as a stack when we're looking at a stack exposure. So I just put my mouse over that little I and learned that it's any lineup that has at least 3 players from one team is considered a stack. So if sometimes it looks like, well, that's more than 100%, that's because you can have 2 stacks within the same lineup.
Yep. So anyway, that's why it also good point, because people might get confused. They look at it like, how come your stack exposures are like 300% there?
Right.
Well, that's the reason why. By the way, a couple questions in our Discord channel to get to. First, from Just Locks. He wants to know, if you're running a single entry lineup for FanDuel, what stack and what pitcher would you go with? So this is also going to correlate to Mr. Coolcam 97 had left us a super chat and said, who is the top stack for FanDuel single entry? So at pitcher, I like Framber Valdez the most for single entry when you get him for half the ownership of Shohei Ohtani. For tournament purposes, you're going to get so much exposure to the Diamondbacks, Giants, the Yankees. So then I'm going to start to look at, all right, who do I like as a stack that isn't one of those teams? Let's see. What makes the most sense? I mean, you could roll with one of those teams, but I tend to want to get a little bit more different. I'm actually going to say for single entry over on FanDuel, the Toronto Blue Jays against Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller's been incredibly up and down this year. He's a young pitcher. He's really talented. That's going to come with the territory. Young pitchers, they're going to be inconsistent. Less than 1% ownership going to Toronto. It doesn't really matter what else you have in your lineup at that point. You're going to be contrarian if you have the Blue Jays. So that's my favorite single entry stack. Toronto Blue Jays for FanDuel. So Just Locks and Mr. Coolcam, Blue Jays. Anything different that you're seeing in the top stacks board, Neil, that you prefer, or maybe you agree with me on the Blue Jays?
I like the call out for the Blue Jays. They're actually, so speaking of the underdog drafts I was doing, like the top batter in their lineup in terms of ADP is like, so it's 36 players get drafted in each one of the drafts. The top batter is Vlad at like 34.5 or something like that. So I built out a Blue Jay stack where you can just play the 1 through 5, whatever pitch you want to do. So I do like the Blue Jays. They seem like a spot like they could certainly blow up Bryce Miller. Atlanta also looks good on FanDuel. I know I said that I might play some Freddie Peralta, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to play Atlanta in other lineups. Also coming in at 2.4% ownership on the stack on FanDuel, 5.6% chance in the top stack. So Atlanta does look really under-owned in Milwaukee as well. So I like them on FanDuel too.
Yep, no issue with that whatsoever. So Mr. Coolcam and just locks in the Discord channel. I hope that helps you guys build out your lineups. And then a follow-up pitcher question from Einstein. He wants to know our thoughts on Kikuchi today. Out of 150 lineups, I have one Kikuchi, so 0.7% exposure to him. It's just going to be hard for me to back him, honestly, where we have this many pitching options. Another thing, too, when it comes to Kikuchi, is you're not getting these crazy value prices on him anymore. Earlier in the year, he was somebody who could be rostered for like 7K, and now he's closer to 8K. So Kikuchi's not really somebody I'm getting to. Is he making into your lineups?
I have one share of Kikuchi in 20 lineups.
All right. So similar. We both have one share of them. And yeah, not something that's really of all that much interest to me on this slate, Einstein. If I'm getting different at pitcher, I'm looking at guys like Alex Wood and JP Sears and Andrew Heaney for cheap. Don't feel great about any of them, but there is some upside in all of those guys.
Greg, could I say one thing? So somebody had asked me for the lineup generator if we could come up with a clear all lineups function. And I had asked that, and they said there was something they're working on. I didn't realize we have that now. We can clear our lineup. So that's useful for me as somebody who is playing 25 lineups today. I can go back and make 5 more.
Yeah, so it's actually something that is live on there right now. I know because we have this product development meeting on Fridays where it's just like, these are the new updates on the site. And that is one of the things that was included there is you can now clear your lineups in the lineup
really
generator,
helpful.
which was something that was not able to be done before. So yeah, if you guys want to do that, clear all lineups and then you can rebuild from the start. All right, let's go and talk about top stacks, Neil. And like we mentioned, there's 3 teams, three teams on FanDuel that are really popular, but on DraftKings, it's only the Giants that are projected for double-digit ownership. And I'm going to refresh to make sure that is still the case. Let's see, refreshing ownership here. And, we have had to come up a little bit. So actually, we do now have the Diamondbacks, the Giants, and the Mets projected for double-digit ownership over on DraftKings. Considering that we now have these 3 teams projected for double-digit ownership, here's what I'm going to ask you, Neil. Of these 3 teams, which is your favorite? We'll do a fuck, marry, kill, actually.
Yeah.
You have to, one of these chalky stacks, you got to have sex with it. You got to marry one of them, and you got to kill one of them. Diamondbacks, Giants, Mets. What are your options here? What are you going with?
Ooh, man, this is tough. All right, I think I'm going to marry the Diamondbacks. So for those who are unfamiliar with the game, they're my favorite stack. I'm going to. So I played more of the Giants, so I feel like I should say I'm going to fuck the Giants, but I actually think that it would be the Mets for me. I think I would fuck the Mets in Fenway, and then I'm going to kill the Giants just because they're the highest owned. I have the most concerns about pinch hit, so I think it's marry the Diamondbacks, fuck the Mets, kill the Giants. How about you?
I'm going to marry the Diamondbacks. It's the team I have the most exposure to. I'll just put the tip in the Mets. Just the tip, right? I've got some exposure to the Mets. Matchup against Cutter Crawford is decent. He's had some blow-up outings. The Red Sox bullpen also could always be a little bit dicey. And then the Giants are the chalky team I'm the most underweight to. So that's what I'm going with. We're marrying the Diamondbacks. Is that the same answer you gave, by the way?
Same answer I gave. Yep.
All right. There we go. And by the way, the Diamondbacks also, as we're about to talk about just general stack exposures, is the team I have the most of overall. And it seems like it was the same for you based on what you said before.
Yep. Correct.
Are there any contrarian stacks today, Neil, that you're getting to a good amount of exposure to, or any ones that if you're only playing 20 lineups, if you look at the top stacks, are there any really contrarian stacks that you think do warrant exposure that maybe the field isn't getting to?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, they're not super contrarian, but I got to a really good amount of the Yankees. They are my most exposed stack. So not extremely contrarian, but I do think the Yankees look pretty good. As far as very contrarian stacks go, I played some Milwaukee. I played, we talked about Toronto as being a very contrarian stack that certainly has some upside. Don't hate that. I don't know if I can play the Angels when you can't play Ohtani at pitcher. It's really tough for me to click that. Houston is kind of interesting. They look good in the top stack tool, 3.6% ownership, 5.3% chance of being the top stack. It's a tough click for me as well because they're in Oakland, but I'm still willing to play some Houston, willing to play some Phillies in Cleveland, coming in at 4.6% ownership, 4% chance of being the top stack. They look okay. Maybe you can always play the Dodgers.
Is there one contrarian stack that you like more than the other ones? If you had to pick one, somebody's building one lineup, they want to be contrarian. Who would be the one contrarian stack that you say that's the one?
What's your cutoff for contrarian?
For today's slate, let's say anything under 5% owned. So you've got the Red Sox are 5.4% projected owned as a team, everything south of them.
All right. Under 5% ownership. I think I would go probably Atlanta. Actually, I didn't even mention them before, but they're coming in 3% ownership, 6% chance of being the top stack on the board. So yeah, it'd probably be Atlanta in Milwaukee. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Anytime you can get the Braves as a contrarian stack, it has to be consideration. Their offense has been absurd this year. They have all these games that put up crooked numbers. They also have a lot of power in their lineup. They have a lot of stolen base potential. You know, you got Acuna. Acuna might have 50 homers and 70 stolen bases this year. So you have so much power, so much speed in that lineup, brings a lot of fantasy upside. There are very few slates where the Braves are not just contrarian. There are very few slates where the Braves are not massively popular. I know the matchup today against Freddie Peralta isn't great, but at 3% owned, I do think they warrant being overweight to the field too. So I agree with you. The Braves going up against Freddie Peralta, I think that whenever, you know what the Braves are like? We used to do this with the Dodgers a lot last year, Neil, where the Dodgers would be low owned and be like, you just play the Dodgers at low ownership. That's what the Braves are going to be for me today. Now we'll see. Maybe they end up coming in more popular anyway, just because people blindly play the Braves at this point, but just a ridiculous team. It's funny. People get down on them because they lost 4 games in a row. And I got people telling me like, oh, Braves, like no good. And then they win 7-5 yesterday. People are tweeting at me during the game being like, oh, the Braves can't be good. Strider's no good. Look, they're about to lose their 5th game in a row. Now they ain't. Put up a bunch of runs on the board, score 7 runs, snap the losing skid up. Braves is a contrarian stack. And then also in the mid-range, we've got the Yankees project for 6% ownership. Mentioned them at the top of the show. This team I get the second most exposure to. Alec Marsh has had some individual good performances. The Yankees lineup, you know, there is still some power upside in there. The other thing to consider too, the Royals bullpen is no good. Alec Marsh pulling up his numbers for the year right now, so we could dig into those a little bit. But I don't look at Alec Marsh as some sort of stalwart pitcher that can't be gotten to. So Alec Marsh overall for the year has a 5.4 ERA, a 5.67 expected ERA, a 6.62 FIP. Another thing also here, a 20% ground ball rate. Nothing gets hit on the ground against him. He's a 26.3% home run or fly ball rate. It's a small sample size. He's only made 3 starts, but the results are terrible. And his minor league results suck this year. In Double-A, he made 11 starts at a 5.32 ERA, a 4.34 expected xFIP. So I just don't think Alec Marsh is particularly good. Even though the Yankees lineup has had some of its struggles, Marsh just doesn't seem somebody who's capable of getting out big league hitters right now. So Yankees stacks just because of how low I am on Alec Marsh. And Yankees, I believe you had also said was a team you're getting exposure to.
Yeah, I have a lot of the Yankees, like 30% or so Yankees stack. So yeah, getting to a lot of the Yankees.
Yeah, makes sense because you're building your lineups in the lineup generator. And when we build lineups in the lineup generator before, we're also getting to a bunch of Yankees. On the other side of it, Sneal, is there any one stack you look at as being overowned that you prefer to be underweight to the field to?
I mean, I already said that I am overweight to the field on the Giants, but I think it's mostly secondary stacks that I have of the Giants. I don't think I have a ton of 5-man stacks. I think that I'd like to be underweight to the field on the Giants as 5-man stacks in part. And I don't know how good this logic is, but part of me, because of the pinch hit risk, I'm like, I feel like I can escape the pinch hit risk better if I play him as a secondary stack than a primary stack. Maybe it's just I feel a little bit better, like a little bit less at risk if I go with a secondary stack of the Giants. Makes it harder for me to play them as a full stack. Yeah, I'd say that's probably my answer of like the team that is the most over. I mean, looking at the top stack tool, the Mets look like they are the most overowned. At 10% ownership, 6.5% chance of being the top stack. But I feel better about clicking the Mets than I do the Giants. Maybe that's just a personal bias thing. How about you?
Yeah, for me, I'm always concerned about pinch hit risks when it comes to the Giants, especially when they're the most popular team on any given slate. So you're going to have some of these scenarios where there are definitely going to be individual hitters that have a chance to hit homer. So, and I'm with you also, Neil, like as one-offs, there's a bunch of these guys that I don't mind getting to. And I'm going to be underweight to I think I'm underweight to every single hitter on the Giants. Let me double check that to be sure. All right. So the Giants, yeah, I'm underweight to every individual hitter on the Giants. You got Jock Peterson. Like I get some exposure to guys like Peterson, Conforto, Lamont Wade, but still I'm less than the 12, 13, 15% ownership some of these guys have. So with that in mind, I do think that you're going to get into later innings and, Jock Peterson probably gets pinch hit for at some point during this game. Mike Yastrzemski, live to get pinch hit for. Lamont Wade, live to get pinch hit for, especially if a lefty comes in. You got somebody like, Wilmer Flores on the bench. Wouldn't be surprised if that change happens. Jake Irvin kind of sucks. Wouldn't be surprised if he's out of the game in the fourth inning or so, and we could start to see some of those Giants hitters come out. So as one-offs, I agree with you. You do have some homer upside there. It's just hard for me to believe you make a 5-man Giant stack and it crushes today, just because I think it's fairly likely some of these guys get pinch hit for in the middle innings in this spot. As far as offenses go, anything else that really stands out to you, offenses that we haven't talked about that are any sort of priorities for you?
I see people asking about about playing the Twins as a stack today, and I'm sort of curious what his splits look like so far this year against lefties, because the Twins do have some really nice lefties, and I'm kind of interested in playing maybe a couple Twin stack might be kind of interesting. They've got Julian in the 2-hole as a lefty, Alex Kirilloff in the 3-hole, Wallner in the 5-hole, just like Kepler in the 4, Wallner in the 5. A lot of good lefties in this Twins lineup going up against Lance Lynn, and he's certainly a volatile pitcher. So I don't hate the idea of playing some Twin stacks. Yeah,
the Twins actually are a team picking up ownership, and I do have some of them about even with the field. We have the Twins at, 4.8% projected ownership as a team. I have 4% exposure to him. So more or less even with the field on the Twins. As far as Lance Lynn goes, he has historically been a pitcher that has pretty significant splits. There was a point in time in Lance Lynn's career, I'd have to go back a few years to get the exact numbers, but there was a point where he was like impossible for righties to hit and then just always got crushed by lefties. And that actually is kind of the case this year as well. I'll pull up his career numbers to get a bigger sample size as well. This year though, Neil, righties have a 273 WOBA against them. Terrible. Lefties have a 437 WOBA. So he's getting smacked around pretty good by lefties this year. And then also, just so we get the bigger sample size for his career, 278 WOBA against righties. So right about in line with what he's done against righties this year, 278 for his career as well. But then 335 WOBA against lefties for his career. So it's a little extreme that he has the well north of 400 weighted on base average against him. But still, this is a guy who's always gotten hit fairly hard by left-handed pitching. So I don't mind taking a shot on some of those lefty Twins hitters. And you are getting a little bit of leverage just because of how popular Lance Lynn is. I'm underweight to the field on Lance Lynn. I have exposure to the Twins, but more or less even to the field when, like we were talking about, they are getting some ownership.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, seems like the field is playing it about right, but there's definitely upside in that lineup.
All right, let's see if we have any other questions in the Discord channel. Nothing else is popping up. So Jordan, let's look at the Pick'em Pro tool, especially because we're sponsored today here by Underdog. They have these promos going on where you can go and get a boost on any sort of play that you get over there. So to read off the numbers again, a 2-leg play over at Underdog, 4x your money, 3-leg play, 8x, 4-leg play, 13x, 5-leg play, 15x your money. So little boost there that's available over at Underdog. If you're signing up for the first time, use the promo code Stochastic so you also get access to all of our fantasy football tools and data. So if you're doing best ball drafts over at Underdog, you get that for free when you sign up using the promo code Stochastic. Pick'em Pro tool. Let's see what is standing out for Underdog. The number one Underdog play of the day is Ben Lively for Ben Lively over 3.5 strikeouts. And here's one that's going to correlate nicely with what we were just talking about, Neil. This is a massively high strikeout prop for Lance Lynn. 7.5. Give me the under on that. 7.5 strikeouts. Very big number for Lance Lynn.
I'm trying to play this card. I gotta I can search. Okay, nice. Makes it easier for me.
Yeah, so those are the two at the top of our board. Ben Lively over 3.5 strikeouts. I don't love this spot for Ben Lively against the Diamondbacks, but 3.5 is a very low strikeout prop. I do really like the Lance Lynn under 7.5 Ks.
Yeah, I like that one quite a bit as well. Wonder if there are any other correlations we can find in here. Do we take the over 0.5 basis for Byron Buxton? I'll sign up for that one. I'm gonna throw that to my card.
Sure. How much? Because I can't play the underdog pick'em stuff from New Jersey. Yeah, one of the good things about having sports betting is that you get sports betting until the sports books cut you off, which is a different issue I'm running into. The other side of it, though, is that I can't play on, the underdog, the prize picks, the pick'em type sites. Is there any kind of restrictions on how they'll let you correlate players or anything like that?
I don't believe so. So far, I haven't run into any issues with that one. Okay. I guess maybe it'll tell me after I try to enter it, but I don't think there's any kind of restriction on like doing both under on Lance Lynn and taking the Byron Buxton.
All right, so let's go with that 3-legger then. We've got Byron Buxton over 0.5 total bases, just need 1 hit from him. We've got Lance Lynn under 7.5 strikeouts, and then Ben Lively over 3.5 strikeouts. So go take advantage of that over at Underdog and make some money. Sign up using that promo code Stochastic, take advantage of the boost, and then also up to $100 bonus on your first deposit when you use that promo code Stochastic.
Pitcher and opposing team batter cannot be combined. Right, damn it.
I thought we were slick, didn't we?
I thought we were. All right, I'll get rid of that. I'll get rid of that Buxton.
Well, you can still do the 2-legger for the 4X.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take it. There we go. Okay.
All right. Not bad. And by the way, the expected win rates on those, we have the Lively prop winning 62% of the time, the Lynn prop winning 58% of the time. So if we do some quick math, let's figure out if this is actually expected to be profitable, Neil. All right. So these two props, we have them expected to win right around 36% of the time on a 4X that's pretty good value. You're getting 4X on something that's expected to win 36% of the time. Yeah, good return there. Good expected.
Got to take advantage of these boosts when you get them.
All right. So there's the boost. Now, Neil, let's close out the show with this home run pick. What is your dong of the day?
All right, let me give this run some hard analytics here, figure out who my dong pick of the day is. Just crunching some numbers real quick.
All right, so here's Neil pulling up the top batters tool over at Stochastic.com. And now he's going to the really hard part, though, is sorting by the home run column.
It is that you got to click over to the all column. So you're not just looking at catchers, and then you got to sort by home run. It's a process. I'm going to go with Corbin Carroll with a 35% chance of hitting a home run. He's my home run pick. How about you?
All right. Well, Corbin Carroll is one of my most rostered hitters today. I do have him in 28% of my lineups, with the Diamondbacks being the team I have the most exposure to. But I'm going to go a little bit of a different way. We talked about Alec Marsh. Alec Marsh, 20% ground ball rate this year. Home run to fly ball rate north of 20%. Giancarlo Stanton is coming on in the second half of the year. He's healthy. Not for long. He's going to get hurt at some point. Like if history repeats itself, if history is any kind of predictor of the future, Giancarlo Stanton is going to get hurt at some point. But while he's healthy, he's going to hit some dongs. We've seen him in the second half of the year now homer in, let's see, what is it? We've got something like 5 homers from Giancarlo Stanton his last 9 games. Wow. I'm going to pick him to another homer today against Alec Marsh. Giancarlo Stanton, that is my dong pick. Let's see. We got some ones in chat here. Sotek's also going with Corbin Carroll. Kanoa's dad trying to trigger me by saying Ellie De La Cruz. Tyler Schaust is going with Corey Seager. SportsWiz is calling for the Christian Yelich bomb. Jason Etter going with Max Kepler. Don't mind that, considering why we just talked about the extreme splits for Lance Lynn and how he struggled against lefties. And Nice Kevin, being nice, says great minds. What he was saying here. Oh, sorry, misread the one. A great pick as always, Neil.
Yeah, I do make great home run picks.
All right.
Devin Neiman taking, I think, is that MJ Melendez, his dong pick.
Okay,
we got a lot of good picks here. Mickey Moniak.
But one final question for Einsteinium, who's saying, why do you like Atlanta more than the Dodgers today? It's as simple as, have you seen the Braves play this year? I mean, it's just, there's no offense that's had more upside over the entirety of the season. And it's the power upside for the Braves. It's the stolen base upside. They are the best team in baseball. They're the offense with the most firepower in baseball, the most fantasy upside. Anytime I can play the Braves at low ownership, it's going to be of interest to me. They've just been a fantastic team from a fantasy perspective. So I'm signing him. That's why I like the Braves more as a contrarian team than the Dodgers today. And then also, the Dodgers are going to have upside against Andrew Heaney, but it's the Braves at low ownership. So that's going to do it for us today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you have not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you ever want to listen to our content on the go, check out our podcast channel, Stochastic Daily Fantasy. Head on over there, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review if you're feeling really kind, because we do appreciate it. Helps us grow out the channel. We're going to have some podcast exclusive content coming in the near future. Be on the lookout for that. Good luck with all your lineups tonight, guys. Hope you have a great weekend, and see you back here on Monday.